OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right. You're very welcome along. Today is the day, ladies and gentlemen. We have the news. It came through late last night that Glen, Waddy Grahams are going to appeal, complain... Object is the word. To really the farcical scenes at the end of the game on Sunday. And this story could rumble all the way on to the weekend. Now, we ain't in Kansas anymore, Toto. What happens now? Who actually knows? Well, maybe Nickey Brennan knows. He's going to join us a little bit later on, a former president who would have appointed a CCCC and so therefore would have some idea of what is about to happen. But late last night, not in time for the papers, not in time for prime time either, was it? Or was it just coming through around prime time?
It was just coming through around prime time. Yeah.
Good timing.
Everywhere and anywhere yesterday. Front page of the Irish Times, you name it.
Yeah, it's a big story. A big shambolic story that could have been nipped in the bud but wasn't nipped in the bud. And so we'll talk about that with Nickey Brennan, because the rule is very clear. The CCCC can intervene. The organising committee of the competition can intervene. They don't have to wait. But the sense was that they couldn't intervene because that would, where would that take us? Us being in charge of our own competitions. That wouldn't take us anywhere.
It'd be a shocker, wouldn't it? A decision that was made by the GAA. It's a bit mad. Yeah, I was chatting to the taxi driver on the way in this morning. He was like, Kilmacud, if I was Kilmacud, I'm not playing it. I'm refusing to play this match. He says when he was manager of a certain club in Dublin years ago, as a soccer manager, he purposely started 12 players because he knew the opposition. I won't name the teams involved. This is 30 years ago.
Sorry, what?
Purposely started 12. Now, this is an underage game. Purposely started 12 players.
That's even worse.
They still lost 4-0. He said they copped on about 20 minutes into the game. But they all had a laugh about it afterwards.
Oh, yeah, well, under 12s.
Yeah, and when you lose 4-0 anyway, then at least you can laugh about it. But yeah, he was adamant. No. I wouldn't play.
Why not?
Keep the trophy. Or else, as some of the lads in the office were saying this morning,
get a replica made.
Well, could Kilmacud just go, take your trophy, Glen. We won't even play the replay. Have it yourself. Just hand over the...
What happens then?
Well, that's an option, isn't it? That's one of the three options.
Yeah, so the options now are that the GAA order a replay. They could also just say, actually, you had an extra player on the pitch, you broke the rules, we're giving the trophy to Glen. Mm-hmm. Or as you say, we don't know what Kilmacud's response is going to be. Or the GAA could say, actually, this didn't have any material impact on the game whatsoever, and we just stick with the result and we all move on with our lives.
We fine you.
Decide yourselves.
Fine could be 500, 5 grand, 50 grand, 500
error
grand.
This was. So Kilmacud now have 3 days to respond. I thought that this would be done, and maybe there was a possibility the game could happen on even Saturday when Dublin are playing Kildare and you have a double header. Because I'd imagine any amount of these players were heading off on their holidays. This has been a hell of a long season for them. They just want to get away now for a couple of weeks. Probably had their flights booked for this morning and are gone for a couple of weeks. And now they're all in absolute limbo. And maybe that feeds into what Kilmacud are thinking and they come out quickly and say, let's just get this done. I would be shocked if Kilmacud didn't just say, let's go again. Let's replay this game. Let's bring a quick end to all of this and get it done.
I'd say when you wake up with a hangover but you've won a trophy a couple of days before, so it numbs the pain and it's not too bad. Like Kilmacud are going to wake up these days with the worst hangover of all time, because they're like, we celebrated winning the All-Ireland and now we actually haven't won the All-Ireland yet.
And that's a difficult thing, because this is different to a Meath Louth scenario where everybody who left the stadium, I was in Croke Park that day, everyone knew this was an outrage and this was going to be a controversy the likes we had never seen before.
Yeah.
Everybody left Croke Park on Sunday going, that was grand. Dramatic end to the game. Kilmacud get their All-Ireland title. On we go. They have their celebrations. It only started rumbling a little bit on Sunday night. People saw it and thought, does that really matter? It wasn't until Monday morning, by which time they've been on it. And they're waking up, as you say, and realise, actually, got a bit of a situation.
Well,
here.
that's. I mean, it was. They were asked about it in the post-match, so it became an issue straight away.
But I don't think anyone, even when it was been asked post-match, and I would flip it on the other side as well. Obviously, a lot of people are pointing to Malachy O'Rourke and saying, well, Malachy O'Rourke, brought it up and said, it happened. We move on. Was Malachy O'Rourke aware exactly of the positioning of all the players
No, I don't
on
think
the
so.
pitch at that stage?
He had an inkling that there was. I mean, here's the thing: if they had just retaken the 45, this all would have been over. We would have been like, "Oh, that was a bit of a wrinkle at the end."
Well,
what was going on there? How did that happen? Interesting, whatever, But that didn't happen. They had the opportunity to fix it at the time, and it's mad that it didn't appear then in the referee's report, and it's mad that the GA didn't step in and say, "Okay, we understand there's a massive potential for controversy here. That a touch paper has been lit." That there's so many aspects to this story that are clearly going to make it a massive story, and let's nip that in the bud. Whatever crisis management happened didn't happen in time.
Well, too much has been made of what Malachy said, because that's heat of the moment. He's having a microphone thrust in his face immediately after an All-Ireland Club final where he's gutted and disappointed. So what he says in that moment, and I believe Malachy meant what he said, because he's that kind of fella anyway. He doesn't want to win in those sort of circumstances.
Well, he doesn't want to be a bad loser.
Yeah.
Like, some managers come out and they're angry, and if there's been an injustice, some managers go, actually, I don't want to be the guy who's coming out saying we've been robbed here.
Of course.
When, again, we don't know what would have happened if there was just the 15 players on the pitch. But the GEA's response is bizarre. Even yesterday, the word that was coming through of, well, if we were to step in on this, where does that stop? When there's a issue in the Junior B down in Mayo next year.
No, All-Ireland finals. We have a rule for All-Ireland finals. We're going to be extra interested.
We have given the All-Ireland club season added interest levels. We have put it front and centre. This is showbiz, baby. And now that everybody's actually taken a real interest, there's never been more talk about one. We're kind of going, well, actually. And like that rule, when it's written, and the fact that an objection is needed, you have to assume part of that is that it's when the referee doesn't know anything about it, and it's brought to their attention afterwards.
But it's not. The rule is actually written very clearly that the organisers of the competition can intervene. You don't need an objection.
But what I'm saying is they have to, because this is a referee's fault. This is on the officials. And part of that is because of this lax attitude that is generally there.
Okay, hang on, just on this, right? So I was a sub a lot. It's a long time ago, at a much lower level than this. But whenever I was being subbed in, I always had to tell the lad I was getting subbed in for, "You're going off, I'm coming in." And I would do it with glee. It's like, you're getting taken off, I'm coming on. Is there not some responsibility on the team to make sure that they've brought their players off?
Absolutely, there is some responsibility.
So it's not just 100%.
It's split.
There's a pie chart.
It's on it all falls back on the referee then. So clearly what happens, it's complete carnage at the end of the game. They're hanging on. We all know what happened last year. They're desperate to go and win. And the sub runs on. And even by the time he's getting in, and we heard from Kathleen on Monday that, the Kilmacud backroom staff are saying, get off the pitch, that there's so much going on. The player doesn't leave. The referee knows this. He knows this because he tells the referee to go off. He tells the player to go off straight away afterwards. Doesn't stop it. They take a quick free kick, and he doesn't just blow his whistle and say, "Actually, hold on a second. We just have to wait."
Yeah, they could have done it.
That's where the problem starts.
100%.
And that has to be on the referee. But again, it just feeds into this. Why isn't it not like in soccer and rugby where you?
Why not? There's your answer,
when
Nathan.
the substitution is
What about
happening, the substitute doesn't come on.
There's your
But this is again that little bit of should a sub come run on and the other lad run off, and he'll Paul Mannion will be like. Every single GAA substitute in the history of mankind has been in the Paul Mannion situation where you're not fully off the pitch when the game restarts.
But Mannion looks up at the screen to see that his name is up there.
So again, there's obviously so much going on. Even he doesn't quite realise what has happened. But it has to be on the officials at that stage of a game to say, hold on a second. And then when he realises it's gone wide.
How is it not in the referee's report is what I'm wondering.
I don't understand that either.
That's bonkers.
I don't understand it. I do, it'd be interesting to hear from the referee in coming days, weeks, months and years about what happened in the aftermath and what they thought was going on. Quirky 1980 says, we played a GA game where an opposition player got sent off in the first half. They came back on with 15 minutes gone in the second half. Took about 5 minutes to cop, playing around midfield in the middle of the rucks.
Well, was that not a GA rule at one stage as well? Is that still a rule that you get sent off, you can come back on for extra time?
Yeah, you can't. Your suspension kicks in, I'm fairly sure, but a player can replace you.
Yeah, Jesus, farcical. Like if Kilmacud, the ball is now very firmly in Kilmacud's court.
So that's the question. What if Crokes don't agree? What if they're like, no, screw you, we won it fair and play on the field? Because
the publicity, the PR machine would be...
Would it though?
Be a disaster. It'd be a disaster.
I don't think it would.
Public relations wise for Kilmacud Crokes, if they refuse to play this game, it's a disaster.
Declan Bogue has this story on the back of the Herald The controversial All-Ireland final could be replayed after Glen were believed to be in favour of lodging an objection. However, Kilmacud may refuse to line out if ordered to replay. The chance of replay are in doubt with the soundings from Kilmacud. A mood is growing within their ranks that if they're asked to replay the game, they would refuse and instead have the cup awarded. No, screw you.
I hope someone in Kilmacud has the sense to replay the game and say in these meetings, lads, come on, we have this would be like the backlash from this. And maybe they don't care about the backlash, but they should care about the backlash.
Oh, I would be shocked.
Why would there be a backlash though against them? What?
Well, I mean,
for not playing.
It's already turned against them because they threw on an extra man against little old Glen, and they're the might of Kilmacud who transferred the greatest player in the country over to their.
But I don't think
ranks.
okay. So you should we should separate all that, right?
Yeah, of course. But I'm just saying because it's Kilmacud, and that's unfair. It is, but it's the reality. Because it's Kilmacud, the backlash would be severe if they didn't play this replay.
I think it would be.
Maybe the most
We obviously
hated club
haven't
in the
heard
country.
anything from Kilmacud, so we don't know what their thinking is. And they may well look at it and say, we were making a substitution. They took a free kick quickly. We didn't have time to get our lad off the pitch. He's in a paddock. He stays there. The referee blows his whistle. Again, the onus is on the officials. They made a mistake. We didn't make a mistake.
Well,
and yes, there's public outrage, but we have won that trophy, and in our minds, we won it fair and square.
Why don't they just come out and say, yeah, we made a mistake as well. The referee made a mistake. It's terrible that all happened. Let's play the game again, and away we go. That's the easy.
You would have to say that that's
the bit where you hold your
most
own hands
likely
up and you accept
scenario.
some responsibility is the bit that's missing from all this. It's like everybody is trying to find someone to point the finger at.
See what you said there, Nathan. You said there that's the most likely scenario. I agreed with you up to yesterday afternoon, yesterday evening, and then now I'm of the opinion. Because it's taken so long for Kilmacud to come out and say something, I'm worried. I'm worried that that's not the option that's going to be pursued by Kilmacud now. I'm worried that it's not going to be played.
It seems like from the outside, it seems like there just hasn't been anybody coming out and putting their head above the parapet and saying, this is what happened, this is how it happened. We take our responsibility, our share of the blame for that, because this bit where they're a victim, like, that's just not true. They're definitely not victims in this.
No.
But they're going to play that victim card, and people are like, where is it in the?
But we don't know they're playing the victim card. Like, they haven't said anything, so they haven't played any card as of yet.
Well, if they're not going to play the game, it's
Yeah,
like,
but again,
let's
let's wait and
Bogue was
see
reporting that's the
what
soundings. Very well sourced reporter. I believe everything he writes.
No, listen, I absolutely.
So I wouldn't be terribly surprised about
connections.
it. They're unavailable to come on the show because they think that we have not covered this in an even-handed manner. I just want to put that let you know that we have asked people from Kilmacud to come on, multiple people. Now we did put Ryan Dwyer on the radio last night on Off the Ball and News Talk, and he called you out, he called me out, he called Kathleen out. I would have to say I disagree with much of what he says. The semantics around the word cheat. Was it unfair? Did they get an unfair advantage?
Look, I'm not suggesting for a minute that Kilmacud knew what they were doing in those last frantic, chaotic moments.
But did they get an unfair advantage from having an extra man on the field?
Is that?
Of course it's an advantage.
Well, an
is
unfair
that cheating?
Well, that's the definition of cheating, is to gain an unfair advantage.
Sorry,
that's literally.
these aren't laws. These are rules.
I know, sure.
And there's
but here's the
nothing
thing.
premeditated about it.
This touchy semantics around the definition of the word cheating, like
that's what the officials are there for. Now, look, I'd be on the other extreme. I wouldn't. I don't believe Thierry Henry cheated. I think Thierry Henry did something, and there's a referee standing 10 feet away, and a referee should blow his whistle and punish him for it. Then morally, you could say maybe Thierry Henry could have done something. Again, I don't believe he actually would have. I think something happened here. That there are officials. There's 8 officials there. They have to make the decision. I don't think in any way that this goes to the level of cheating.
I mean,
you could say the
by the very definition of the word it does, though.
Like, then every little.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I would say when. But here's the thing.
Some guys run it. Is every foul cheating?
So here's the thing. Did Maradona cheat with the handball? Right? Yeah, of course he did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But we were
Same
like,
as Henry
good man. You're a legend for doing that because you're a little guy and it's against England. And like when James McCartan was like an absolute superstar, he had that. He would run past you and he would grab your chest and he'd pull you down on top of the referee. Be like, "Oh, free in for little James," and be like, "Yeah, come on, James, you're a genius."
The Kilmacud thing is not.
Like, if this is different,
the only way
a million things happen in games. Like, not all of them are good. It doesn't necessarily mean it's cheat. A rule was broken. I mean, you trust that the referees will implement the rules correctly. They didn't do that. Now, whether that means because it was at such an important stage of the game that Kilmacud then should have to replay the game,
I firmly
quite possibly.
I take Nathan's opinion on cheating very seriously, given his track record in the crappy quiz. But I have to say, in this instance, I'm not like the only way this is cheating. This incident is if it's premeditated. I think. And I'm not saying for a second.
I think the premeditation actually doesn't matter. Do you gain an unfair advantage? Yes or no? The answer is yes.
Yes, they gained an unfair advantage.
That's
what
the gain an unfair advantage 100 times during a match.
But so then teams cheat 100 times during a match. I think this doesn't matter.
Again,
but
there's the rules, so you push the rules as far as you possibly can.
Or you break
like
the
if
rules.
a lad takes too many steps.
Yeah,
if he takes 2 hops.
Yeah.
Sorry, ref. I took 2 hops. I didn't say, no, that's the referee's job.
Anyway, my point.
That's his job.
You're getting as worked up about it as apparently some other people are. But I do think that all of this. The use of language around not being allowed to call something what it is it's very strange, and it seems to have struck a chord, touched a nerve, whatever. And as a result, we haven't heard from them. That doesn't make any sense.
Want to come out and say something. Like if they want to say something on the matter, they're more than welcome. We'll give them a platform to say something on the matter. But not saying anything is not great either. Like we've said it about the GAA yesterday. Defend your corner.
Well, there's a good even-handed piece by Sean Moran today, and obviously they've got the 16 men picture that they used in the front of the paper yesterday, and he's making the point about sportsmanship in Glen. If they have a legitimate claim to the rematch, there's also the immediate perspective of the team manager Malachy O'Rourke and him saying that. Now I do think Malachy in the heat of the moment said what he thought was a personal view and not the club's view. But he does also say sportsmanship cuts both ways. It was equally open to Kilmacud to offer a replay on the basis that they had broken the rules, and they too must be dismayed at how their victory has been submerged in controversy. These are dilemmas no club wants. I think in the office Phil was making the point that it would be hollow for Glen if they were to get the trophy under those circumstances, but it's pretty hollow for Kilmacud to get the trophy at the moment, right?
No, the worst case scenario here is that
Glen win the replay.
I think Glen win the replay. I think they've won it on the field. That if somehow this game was not played and that the trophy ended up with Glen,
but if
they've never finished in front on the scoreboard, I don't know. And listen, I understand.
I'm not saying they're happy about it, but I'm not saying Glen would be happy about that. They wouldn't. But at the same time, Kilmacud can't just take this and go, yeah, no, we won it.
No,
because you'd actually 2 extra men on the field of play at the end of the game. You're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. You just can't. There can't be special rules for you.
We'd be replaying about 90 of the last 100 All-Ireland finals if there was a substitute on the field of play when play resumed.
When they stand on the goal line.
When
they stand on the goal line.
Goal line one
but they were still on the field of play, do you know what I mean?
That's black and white. The Darren Mullen one is black and white. That's an advantage. That's an unfair advantage. I don't care if it's for 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Couple
of quick comments on this. Jack Cosgrove, Ger's behaviour yesterday was a disgrace, trying to point the blame on Crokes. I didn't. I said that they were lacking leadership in not coming out and saying that, we made our mistakes and we're willing to offer a replay. And now all of a sudden, the story is emerging that they're talking about not coming to play the game, that they're going to say, no, that's not fair. We're the victims in all this. We've had our All-Ireland taken. They have to stop pointing the finger and go, well, what did we do? We had too many men on the field of play. And what are we going to do to try and fix the situation? And think forward about what actually might happen here.
But they're allowed to feel that. So they're allowed to feel incredibly frustrated that they went up on the Hogan stand, lifted that trophy, had their big homecoming, why did they have 16
men on the field of play?
Had all of that. Because the referee didn't stop the play. They were allowed to have that. But now they need to move on past that to actually, you know what, the right thing for us to do here is to play this game again so that everyone can stop talking about this. Let's go and beat them a second time, and let's go and lift the trophy a second time. Let's go and have a second good night out. Let's have a full week of celebrating then, and there will never be a doubt that we were the best team in the country.
Well, that'll be the least controversial outcome from the replay. If Kilmacud were to win it, then you're like, okay, they've won it. But if Glen win the replay, it's
best of 3.
Well, it's
maybe that's the thing to do. Is here, listen, we'll offer you a best of 3. It would be the greatest games of all time. Played in a small venue though, instead of Croke Park.
Yeah.
Where there can be fever pitch, where maybe the fans can invade every time there's a decision that they don't like.
Well, they may well end up having to play it somewhere else if it doesn't happen. If it doesn't happen this Saturday. Oh, another question: why is Dublin Kildare happening in Croke Park? Division 2, Dublin Kildare in Croke Park.
It'll probably
be of that pitch.
It's going to be a much bigger crowd than most of the other games that happen. Anyway, that's a separate issue. You can say that rubbish for a slight tangent if you want. Mark Dunning says Glen have to appeal. Imagine a scenario where this happens in another game in the future and the club sinned against appeals and gets a replay. Glen would look incredibly foolish for not appealing then. I don't think. You know, it's I mean, it's okay. I see your point. It's whatever. What is the correct thing to do? We all know what it is. GAA step up and make the decision. Asks Ciara Hudson. What is the correct thing? What is the right course of action here?
When has the GAA been good and quick at coming out and making decisions?
No, answer the question. Answer the question. What is the right course of action here?
GAA from now on or from the start?
From now on,
GAA
from
should
this,
have intervened.
But from this point, what's the correct outcome?
I
GAA
think the
order a
game
replay
should
straight
be
away.
replayed.
Yeah.
I think the game should be replayed.
The only
I
logical
don't go along with this line of thinking that the extra player didn't affect the passage of play. Like, sport is a million different things. We have no idea what would have happened if the player wasn't there. And I think even for Kilmacood's sake, it's just worth going out and playing it again, because like they do not want this
To your point,
hanging over them.
I think that was obvious from like about 5 minutes after full time.
Yeah.
And at that point, absolutely. Anyway, Nickey Brennan is coming up in about 20 minutes. We'll talk to him about that. Morning, lads. It's Shifty lads. I don't think it is actually all the ref's fault. When you run in with your piece of paper, surely it's the club that has to call their player off. It should be on the team. I mean, certainly there needs to now be a little conversation about whose responsibility is that. Like, we're going to see games slow down to a snail's pace, a la the rugby Lions tour last year, where the games were 2.5 hours long. If every substitution we have to like wait for people to stroll off, do you know? But we probably have to do. John Claffey, what does Adrian Barry think of all this? We don't know. We don't know.
He's been hiding.
He's locked away in the meetings, no doubt, giving serious advice.
They had fireworks and all down in Kilmacood.
You mentioned this on Monday as if in Glen they wouldn't have had fireworks if they.
Oh, of course they would have.
Wait, what's wrong with fireworks?
No.
People from
I'm
South
just-
Dublin
I'm
not
just
allowed to
saying they were-
celebrate?
they were
They're
full
not
on
enjoy life.
celebrating. Yeah.
I think fireworks are illegal in the Republic of Ireland.
There is that also.
Well,
but
What's wrong with fireworks?
Where do they get them from?
I think probably from the north.
Yeah.
That's generally what happens, isn't that? Are they still illegal? I think they are. I mean, I'm fairly sure they are because
frowned upon, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah, I think there's
It's like a dog license. The guards aren't really going to do
technically
anything.
illegal. But anyway, good to know that Nathan is if you want some bangers, a few Roman candles, just open up his coat there. He's got some for you. Danny Mack says, if it was my club, we'd be celebrating after our objection already. Wouldn't even offer a replay. I mean, this could go either way. There's still room for everybody to make massive missteps from a public relations perspective. Aaron Kenny says, has anyone actually looked at the video footage and tried to find out the players at fault for failing to come off, or the management team failing to signal? I think a lot of parsing over the Zapruder film has been done. Enemies OK Feeney says, why would they say anything on the matter? For God's sake, they won. They don't want this, don't want a replay, don't want a big media storm, for God's sake. Yeah, but like, you don't get to decide. You don't get to decide that like, oh, everybody should just ignore this. The Irish Times put it in the front of the paper on the Tuesday afterwards, yesterday. So you can't, like, we're not the only people talking about this, but they should come out and manage the situation. Crisis 101 is you get out, you go in, you put your best and most likeable person out there, you know, you be a bit apologetic and you go, well, this is unfortunately, it's a very unfortunate situation. We think we won the game fair and square. If the powers that be decided on a replay, we'll go for the replay. Away we go.
Do you know that, right,
they didn't do that though.
No. Do you know that they were saying Malachy O'Rourke is coming out? No, he's being a big man about it, and he's saying, oh, you know, we don't want to win like this. If it was the other way around and Malachy O'Rourke's team had been the team with the 16th man, we know what Malachy O'Rourke would have done. He would have said, I don't want to win like this.
We don't know
Well,
what anyone would have done.
We know what type of person he is. This is the
we
fact.
We don't. Like, you claim to know what type. I'm sorry. I think that's like
if this
incredibly
is Ballyhonest,
presumptuous.
If this is Ballyhonest,
I have no idea how anyone
how
would
would
react.
you feel if Ballyhonest was in Kilmacood's position?
You'd like to think that you'd be, if anybody ever asked you for your opinion, you'd like to think you'd be magnanimous and say,
don't want to win like this.
This isn't a good look. Like, this is supposed to be sport. It's supposed to be the best of the smallest local unit of the GAA.
And fair. Sport is supposed to be fair. Level playing field.
What's the point?
I mean, Jesus.
Are fireworks illegal in Ireland? We've asked Google. Please be safe and do not have fireworks in your possession. It is illegal in this country and you're liable to prosecution if you're found to be in possession of fireworks. Send them, I can't believe it. Send them to jail. It's not. We're not saying that. It's totally legitimate.
No, my point was they were very busy celebrating and having a great time, as they should have been. But then I'm sure the celebrations were rudely cut short at some point. Well, maybe they're still on it. Maybe Glen are still on it. And if they are, fair play to them, because the game's not going to be this weekend regardless. But I think we need to find out fairly quickly.
Yeah, David McLean says, after all is said and done, I'd say Ger will probably be barred from the borough of Stillorgan. There was a text message that said he's a wanker. So I'm not looking forward to the Vincent Miners being.
What sort of things in Stillorgan can Ger not do? There's bowling, isn't there?
No, they destroyed the.
They got rid of the bowling.
They knocked down. I presume they're building some apartments. Yeah, where every time Bruce Springsteen would come to Ireland, he would rent out the bowling.
Oh, would he?
It was a very famous name for that bowling place that I can't now think of. He would rent it out for the evening, and he'd bring all his band, and everybody would go there for the evening. But yeah, last time I was in Stillorgan, it was gone, demolished.
So that's one of the things.
More room for more apartments.
Yeah, Jesus. Doesn't matter to Ger anyway. You won't be allowed back in Stillorgan.
Terry Kelly says, correct decision. Croaks offer the replay, saying we made a mistake. Glen say thanks for the apology, but in the interest of sport and respect, we decline the replay and we all move on.
That could well happen.
No, it's too late. Well, maybe it's not too late. Maybe that will happen. But that's definitely what would have happened. I think if Croaks had been out on Sunday evening and said, "Look, we understand there was a bit of confusion at the end there. In the interest of before we go celebrating, before we light the touch paper on our magnificent Roman candles."
That would be Glen playing chess there. That would be them playing chess. We're going to object to the result. Kilmacud are going to offer us the replay. We're going to say, nah, have your tainted All-Ireland. We don't care. Take it with you. We're going on our holidays. Enjoy your little... enjoy your asterisk All-Ireland. That would be chess and checkers from Glen, I think.
But also, that's a possible outcome here. And, I'm sure the GA are negotiating something along those lines in the background.
Something along those lines.
OTBAM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you. Catherine Murphy's going to join us live from Melbourne. Nickey Brennan's going to give us his thoughts on these. One JD, please. It is this week's version of Virtual Insanity. We've got the sports pages. And Ike Anagu is Orlagh Farmer's recently retired Cork footballer, six-time All-Ireland winner. And Ike Anagu is tearing up trees as an espoir at La Rochelle and has just been named in the Ireland under-20 squad for the Six Nations. Can still play for South Africa and will eventually become eligible for France as well. So we'll see what happens. Nathan questions, is every foul a cheat? Of course it is, but when the cheat is caught, the referee calls a free. This clearly broke the rules, so it is cheating and therefore something needs to be done. Like your point about it's only cheating if the referee doesn't catch it. Like in that case... you're saying the referees are there to stop the cheating. If every foul is it, yeah. But then when the referee doesn't do it, you get away with the cheating. The breaking of rules, it's cheating. Like this is the semantics the mental gymnastics you've got to go through to be pissed off at the use of the word cheating. Like,
but I would imagine every player in every game then cheats in some way.
Yeah. But this is an egregious extra. We have an extra man on the field of play.
This is obviously a level above all of that. But I still think the onus is on the referee to just stop the play, wait, retake the free.
Premeditation is important. You can premeditatively decide to dive in soccer or Gaelic.
I don't really think you can. I think like you're moving at 100 miles an hour and you go, I'm going to throw myself there. Again, but the referee's job is to stop that. You haven't the night before gone.
But it is cheating.
I'm going to...
It is. Like, you can't deny that. That's the whole point.
Rules. You get booked. On we go.
Yeah, you were cheating. You got caught. In this case, it happened. It didn't get caught. Like, whether or not it was intentional is actually largely irrelevant to the use and definition of all the words. Two things we need to talk about. Patrick Reed throws a tee at Rory McIlroy. The beef is real. Or is it? You're a bit sceptical like this, but you're one of the few people in the world who's sceptical about it.
Well, sorry, you missed the most exciting part, which was that Shane Hannon thought it was a cup of tea.
No, Colin Buhig thought it was a cup of tea.
Thought that he had thrown, which would have really been a story.
Yeah.
I want to see the video evidence before all of this. Listen, Patrick Reed is an easy man to punch when he's down and is not a likeable figure. And there's every possibility that he went up to Rory and Rory's obviously leading the charge for good in golf, and Patrick Reed is very much on the side of evil in golf. And maybe he doesn't want to talk to Patrick Reed. Rory knows, we got a bit of an insight from that Kimmage article as to, say, the Sergio Garcia texts first thing in the morning abusing Rory because he got a bad tee time, that all these guys may be putting all of the blame for their misfortune and their mistreatment when they're playing European Tour events at the hands of Rory. And Rory's like, I just don't have time for these. He's in the middle of a practice session. Like, is he throwing is he taking it out? Like, a tee is hard to throw at someone. It doesn't really take flight like a dart.
No, it's pointless.
So it's just going to flop down short of Rory McIlroy. It's
pathetic.
Did Rory McIlroy even know? Like in the long list of misdemeanors of Patrick Reed, and I'm not sure whether we're safe now to talk about them, considering one part of his court case this week was dismissed. He's suing everybody and anybody in America for destroying his reputation. Like, is this near the top? I think it again just underlines how bitter it actually is, because there was a period last year where it was, like Lee Westwood, Dean Pope have gone, but we soldiered together in the Ryder Cup. We're still friends.
At the end of
It's
last
all
year,
fine.
it looked like it was all they got to do is get rid of
Greg.
Yeah, and
They've doubled down on Greg. Everybody else is going from Liv, and Greg is getting more power.
Right.
So the guy who was running it previously is now stepping away, concentrating more on Newcastle and everything, all their other sporting investments, and Greg is fully in charge.
Right, okay. So then that level of peace isn't going to happen. I believe all this, to be honest. Again, it all seems credible.
Yeah.
Patrick Reed is standing behind. Rory says hello to Harry Diamond, the caddy, who seems to...
Salutes him.
What's
What's this like? Does he give him the... Like,
America.
well, again, like, is a salute... If someone goes like that to you, that's a bit sarcastic, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I presume it's like, hail fellow, well met. That's what I understand the salute to me.
Comrade.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
All these golf beefs are fake, aren't they? They're all just...
No, I think they would have been previously, and like the Ryder Cup, like actually like one of the greatest Ryder Cup matches of all time, Rory against Reed, and Rory's giving it all that, and they're riling up the crowd. Like, that's theatre. But
Yeah.
there's a definite bitterness and awkwardness now with, like, if you're Rory and Sergio Garcia, who was at your wedding, was one of your best mates on tour, is texting you abuse at 6 o'clock in the morning and blaming you for the fact that he's got a bad tee time out on tour. And that's been replicated by Poulter, Westwood, all of whom... Now, Rory has taken this on his shoulders. Like, he wants to be the head of,
And
as I say, good, and very much is, and has done it brilliantly. So is he going to be upset with falling out with Patrick Reed? And also, Patrick Reed is the easiest man in the world to have a fight with, because everybody's going to be on your side. So...
Yeah. Reed is the wicked witch of the West, and Rory's the good witch. Do you know, there's good. It's good and bad in this scenario. And Reed plays the villain very well. I think he enjoys the role.
You'd have to think so. Now, the fact he's suing people for about $1 billion, because that
I mean, maybe
that's
he
been
enjoys the
created.
money better. Okay, so that is happening at the moment. That's one of the things that is going on. The other thing that we need to talk about is you picked your Premier League.
I don't know if we've time to fully do this justice. I was picking last night. It didn't feel like the most exciting half team of the year as I was going through it. Like, so many players have underperformed as the leading teams this season. Next week I might do a team of the season outside the top six, where there's a bit of, real depth to it. So what I've gone with then for my team of the year, in goal, it's a tight decision. I've gone with Aaron Ramsdale ahead of Nick Pope, who Bruno Guimaraes said last night was the greatest goalkeeper in the world. Nick Pope has kept 10 clean sheets in a row now for Newcastle, 12 in 20 games. I just feel Ramsdale has been so important to Arsenal in terms of his quality as a goalkeeper, in terms of the saves he's made, but also just his attitude. Like, he's playing under a lot more pressure these last few weeks than Nick Pope is, because I think Jonathan Wilson made a great point on Off the Ball on Monday night. Like, there's an insanity around Arsenal at the moment that belies the fact we're only halfway through the season. Every game feels like a title decider, and even though you could question maybe his role in the Lisandro Martinez goal on Sunday, I just think he has emerged as such a brilliant leader in that Arsenal team. I'm going to put him in slightly ahead of Nick Pope. And also, you can't just have an entire Newcastle backline, which I very nearly could have.
Okay, so your backline is Trippier, Schär, Saliba, Zinchenko.
Testament to what Eddie Howe has done. Like, Kieran Trippier is at 32 and he's playing the best football of his life right now. He contributes as good as any attacking right back in the league. His level of assists, his involvement in their attacking play, but he's also just a bloody brilliant defender as well, and has arguably been their best player so far this season. So I think Trippier is nailed on at centre back. Fabian Schär, I have just in ahead of Sven Botman as a Newcastle defender. I think Schär probably adds a bit more in what Newcastle try and do attacking wise, brings the ball out of defence very well, but their defensive record is just insane. If you take away that game against Sheffield Wednesday in the Cup where they conceded a couple of late goals, like to not concede a goal in 10 straight games is is as good as you will get from a defence at the very highest level. So I think Shara has been brilliant this season. William Saliba just ahead of Gabriel on the Arsenal side. Like, they must be thinking, why didn't we bring this guy back sooner? Considering all the defensive problems they've had over the last couple of years. Looks absolutely top drawer. So Saliba, like other contenders, maybe Akanji has been the pick of the Manchester City defenders, but standards have been set so high at City over the last couple of years. I don't think they've got anywhere near that. Left back was a difficult one in that there hasn't really been an outstanding left back so far this season. Zinchenko's only played 11, 12 games for Arsenal, but every time he does play, and he's on that Cancelo, obviously coming from Manchester City, but you are watching him on Sunday, those positions he picks up, like the bravery to move into midfield, the trust he plays is in his teammates, and the bit of leadership he seems to bring as well to the Manchester City side.
Has he played enough games to get in the team?
Yeah, I think so. Like, Dan Burn has been very, very good for Newcastle as well. It's hard to get your head around a 6'7" left back being able to do what he does. Luke Shaw would have been close. Ooh. There's definitely a little bit of this with one or two of them of, I'm worried, I probably was a bit of recency bias. No, there was a bit of recency bias in it, in that some of these players have been brilliant since the World Cup, and you kind of forget the World Cup feels like a season ago rather than actually this season. But again, away from that, I don't think there was any really outstanding contenders for left back. So I think Zinchenko's probably been the most important left back so far this season. Yeah. Midfield, Rodri and Casemiro in the middle of midfield. That'd be a bloody good midfield in reality. Rodri, aside from Erling Haaland, I think has been City's best player this season. They've had a real struggle in midfield in that Gundogan, Bernardo Silva. None of these guys have consistently got to the level, but I think Rodri has been outstanding in every game I've seen him so far this season. Obviously the criticism will be maybe he keeps it a bit too simple at times, but I think he knows his role inside out. He helps protect the defence, and he just lets the better players do it. The fact they haven't done it isn't really his issue. Like Casemiro, the improvement that he has brought about in Manchester United, I do think there's a little bit of, they were so bad for so long in the middle of midfield, and there was such a frustration and anger towards McTominay and Fred. Like, every 40-yard ball that Casemiro now plays is, has any midfielder ever done anything like this in the history of football? Expectations were so low around that position, but again, his importance to changing the attitude of the team,
and his absence at the weekend was keenly felt. And that's the bit where we always get accused of ex-player in his absence has become world class, and we're particularly bad at it here in Ireland. But in this instance, it only served to further highlight.
It's not just
this
what
guy's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not just what he does; it's what he allows other players to do. He's given Bruno a bit of freedom and Eriksen a bit of freedom to play. You could see the game passing Eriksen by at the weekend because Casemiro wasn't there.
I think it's not just freedom; it's confidence that they know that they're going to get this ball back in exactly the format that they want it, at the right pace and in the right area and going in the right direction, as opposed to previously where somebody would have taken an extra couple of touches and they would have shuffled away, and all of a sudden it's back at the centre back and you're like, what are we doing here, lads?
Well, there was a nervousness around Fred and McTominay when they would get on the ball in that spot 10 yards outside their area as to what they would do. And understandably, because they would give it away too often, whereas with Casemiro, you trust him that when he gets it, he's going to hold on to it. It would have been fascinating to see what would have happened if he was there. I was commentating on United a couple of weeks ago in the game against Bournemouth, which they won easily, but Bournemouth had sort of 6-7 chances in the second half. And I was with Kenny Cunningham, and he was making the point that, yes, Casemiro is very good at what he does, but they are totally overrun in midfield, that a team that has energy like Arsenal can get at Eriksen and Casemiro as good as he is, because he just can't cover the amount of ground that he needs to. So they probably need somebody else still in there alongside him.
Who were the centre backs that day?
That game against
for United,
Luke Shaw was back at left back, so I'm going to go with...
Was Lingard playing?
It was Lindelof and Maguire actually were the centre backs that time. That night. So the time the two of them went back in. So there is a bit of that as the uncertainty that they bring in, and you see that every time Maguire, there's such a lack of trust amongst United fans, particularly at Old Trafford, that every time Maguire comes on the pitch, there's a... And he seems to feel it, the team seems to feel it, and that nervousness just sort of trickles through absolutely everybody. It was such a stupid tackle against Crystal Palace. Like, that's the one thing with Casemiro. Like, what was he thinking?
I know.
Like, he was lucky not to be sent off. It was such a reckless challenge that he ends up costing his team, and now they need to try and go and regain a little bit of momentum again with just 1 point in 6. But look, I think Casemiro's nailed on for the team. The three in front of them: Saka, Odegaard, Rashford. Rashford is probably the one where it feels like there's a bit of recency bias. Like what Miguel Almiron did before the World Cup, is that better than what Rashford has done since the World Cup? You could definitely make an argument for it. I think Saka and Odegaard are absolutely nailed on. Like, you know, both up in 7-8 goals this season. Like Saka's performance on Sunday against Manchester United, I just think brought him to a whole other level. Odegaard as the captain, the control he's showing in games, again contributing with goals over the last few weeks. I certainly didn't see either of these two getting to this level this season for this Arsenal team.
Yeah.
Slightly under pre-Christmas, pre-World Cup, I was like, they should cash in Rashford now that his form's back. I've changed my mind on that. It's fair to say that I've come.
No, he has
circle.
to keep doing it. So he's got what, 9 Premier League goals.
Well, let me finish my point. So, but in the papers today, Ten Hag is like trying to woo him to sign. That's a power shift.
Please don't go to PSG.
Yeah. I think it looks repeatable though, Nathan. Right? It looks like.
Oh, it does. Like the goal he scored at the weekend was top drawer, but we probably thought it was repeatable and it would never stop. And again, the very, very top players, it does never stop. So he needs to get to 20 goals. What's his best? 17 in the Premier League, and we sort of thought that season when United were brilliant under Solskjaer, he'd just kick on again. Didn't happen. So bring this run to the end of the season, get to 20 Premier League goals, then sign your new contract and be the guy that they can rely on over the next couple of seasons.
He's not moving. From within Shaw, he loves to fight, born to play in red and white. That's what the United fans do.
There's many a United fan who's had lots of great chance through the years. Who's
imagine going to PSG though.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool.
Well, you're also going to PSG.
He won't though. He won't.
You'd assume if he goes to PSG, he's going to replace Kylian Mbappe, which is not the easiest task in the world.
No, but if Mbappe leaves, the PSG fans will be desperate for somebody good to come and replace. So it is difficult, but equally you would be coming with a slightly different attitude where, you know, the manager still picks the team and the baggage isn't there that Mbappe, whenever he leaves, will take with him. Are we making enough of Saka? Again, recency bias, but like if the World Cup was picked, England picked their team now, you'd be like, oh my God, these guys, they're pretty good.
Well, I think Saka's been, at it right since the start of the season. There's probably been, he's been of the front three. Martinelli, again, maybe he's just had a little dip over the last couple of weeks where he's the first guy to come off.
Who's the footballer of the year?
Erling Haaland is the footballer of the year.
Definitely. Like he's doing what we expected him to do in a team that dominates all the games.
You still got to do it.
I understand you still have to do it, but what Saka is doing at 21 is like dragging Arsenal. Okay, not single-handedly, and it's not single-handedly at all.
Quite possibly, if Arsenal end up winning the league by 7-8 points and the decision is made, he's a young English player. Do you give him?
But no,
Manchester City never win. They never get the Player of the Season award when they deserve it.
Take all that out, right? Take all the how it'll vote, but like he's in the conversation by any sane metric.
Absolutely, and like that's the criticism and the struggle that Manchester City players have in this all of the time. That like they should win. They have the best team. They have the best depth. They have the best group of players. So for Saka to be the best player in a team that really shouldn't be anywhere near that level, and to raise his game and to raise everyone around him's game, absolutely he should be in the running. But I think Odegaard as well, like in the middle, far more involved in the game at times, has to be in that mix.
Okay.
Like, Odegaard, like he's such a brilliant story from the position he was in, from like how many players are as talented as he has at 14, 15, making his international debut at 15 for Norway, go to Real Madrid, you're wondering if it'll work out. He played in Dublin a few years ago for the Norway under-21s against Ireland, and you're sort of looking at him going, geez, what happened to this guy? He was at Real Sociedad at the time. But to come to Arsenal, and now he's most certainly in contention for player of the season, for the best player, the best midfielder in the Premier League. Like, he's the best midfielder in the Premier League. Up top then, I've gone for the guy that has really just transformed football as we look at it. Erling Haaland got in there.
Nearly Evan Ferguson.
Just ahead of Evan Ferguson. Just ahead of Evan Ferguson.
Snuck him in.
It's almost just become another hat-trick. On we go with our lives. The like, how will he ever live up to this next season?
Well, just do it again. That's what Terminators do. Unstoppable. And so, is there an official word from you're with? What's your club? Jude's, is it?
I do not represent. I only represent myself.
Ballyhaunis.
And so is there like general aghastness at there, but for the grace of God go they, or they're like...
Well, in fairness, I would say, Judes would take getting to an All-Ireland final. Now, I definitely sound like I'm from Mayo saying that.
True.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Kilmacud beat them in the Dublin final last year, so...
Nathan, good stuff. You wish them well, is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
Hey, Judes.
All the Dublin clubs bandy together on the south side, don't they? And get behind each other.
Of course.
That's what happens.
Yeah. I'm a north sider, I wouldn't know.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. We're switching our attention to the Australian Open, and to do that I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Catherine Murphy, live from Melbourne. Catherine, this is an inevitable procession for Novak Djokovic, isn't it? Surely at this stage?
It really feels that way. Hello to you, Ger. He was so dominant against the Australian Alex de Minaur. I have never witnessed domination like that on a tennis court. I feel a little bit vindicated, Ger, because in his post-match interview, he said something that I thought, there's my evidence. For a few years, I have felt like Novak Djokovic is at such a high level that sometimes he drops a set, and I'm convinced he has decided to do that. I'm convinced that sometimes he's thinking, I haven't had enough matches in build-up events. I'd like a four-setter for my fitness. Or maybe, Ger, it's because he's just at such a high level, he gets a bit bored with the opposition. He becomes complacent. He drops a set. In that win over Alex de Minaur, he spoke to Jim Courier on court after, who is such a good post-match interviewer. And Jim Courier said to him, I'm not going to ask you how you beat Alex de Minaur, but I'm going to ask why in front of a packed Aussie crowd who wanted a long night at the tennis. Like, these are crowds that have got used to staying up for Andy Murray till 4 a.m. Why are we all on our way home? Why'd you beat him that way? And he said, because I wanted to. And it was chilling the way he said it. And he finished the interview with a massive warning to his opponent tonight, Andrei Rublev. He said, playing against Andrei Rublev will be similar. They're similar players with similar styles, so I hope the result's the same. It was so chilling. It was like, I'm going to win this. Oh, and he also said the words, I don't want to celebrate too early, as if there was an option, Ger, at the Australian Open that the rest of the draw can go, actually, do you want to give him the trophy now? We'll keep playing for ranking points and prize money, but we all know the outcome. I've never seen a situation at the Australian Open where we feel like we know the winner and the countdown is on to his trophy presentation, but you never know, and that's the great thing about sport.
There's a bit of a siege mentality, isn't there, Catherine, around Novak Djokovic at this tournament? Like, he even referenced, the narrative around his injuries, I think, at this tournament, which is clearly irked him a little bit.
Shane, you're totally right. Now, the complicated part of those comments is that he made those comments in a Serbian media gathering with print journalists that we weren't party to. So we didn't get any of those quotes in English. And it's caused a bit of a stir because reportedly he told Serbian media that, he feels like when other people have injuries, and I presume he's referring to Rafael Nadal, they're the victim. When he has an injury, he's faking it. Now, there were questions, audible questions, in the media seats at Rod Laver Arena when he started to destroy Alex de Minaur, because we're like, I'm sorry, he can have a hamstring injury. And again, a great question by Jim Courier led him to say, I didn't feel any pain today. Then he went to that Serbian press gathering where he made those comments. He also reportedly made comments about Alex de Minaur, saying, we don't have a relationship. Now, a year ago, Alex de Minaur was like a lot of players, and I believe he said something to the effect that, well, you have to be vaccinated to play here. Now, I'm not so sure that he uttered words that would suggest he's in some sort of feud with Alex de Minaur, and some of the papers ran with that. And as you know, guys, that's the great thing about Off the Ball, and it's the great thing about TV. You can't take people out of context because you hear the tone in what they're saying, which you don't in print, which can make it dangerous. But it caused a lot of headlines. It upset Alex de Minaur, who then tweeted saying, why do the media always have to make a controversy and a headline out of everything? I was outclassed and outplayed. So I felt for Alex de Minaur that he was upset by some of the coverage. But it's never dull. That's one thing, that's for sure, with Novak.
No, we're 10 minutes away from the start of his next match. I do want to just point out one thing. We were talking about Breakpoint, the new Netflix series on the show last week. Every single one of them who took part in it, dead this week. Gone. No thanks. It's like...
That is true. And this is an important point you raised, because I was really triggered yesterday. I saw that Johnny Sexton was asked about the upcoming Netflix coverage of the Six Nations. And I was like, Johnny, you run so far away from that, because you don't need to be injured or out of the World Cup. Please, guys, can you start a campaign to let Johnny Sexton know about the Netflix curse?
Yeah.
Because we don't want Johnny Sexton having any part of any Netflix curse ahead of the World Cup. And if Netflix are following the Six Nations, can I trust you to sort that out for me? I was really concerned when I saw that.
Having said that, it's good information to have now, because we can just send them into... I mean, if they can only follow the All Blacks for the rest of the year, we'd be happy enough with that.
Oh, that'd be so good. Follow the All Blacks. And what about Eddie Jones? Look, we could talk for an hour about rugby, but Eddie Jones is already getting such publicity over here for rugby in Australia, and rugby has really been struggling. He has been on 7:30, one of the highest profile current affairs shows. It's like he's gone on prime time over here to explain why he's back in Australia. And I saw that on BBC 5 Live he was talking about Owen Farrell getting a hard time of English fans, and Owen Farrell really gristling at the mention of Eddie. And Eddie, to me, is just sounding like all my dreams have come true in rugby. I mean, he's over in Australia raising the profile of rugby while irking the English rugby players. I mean, it's funny already. It's already funny to watch.
He's like Prince Harry. He's doing all the media rounds, getting them done.
Yeah, and it's brilliant, because rugby has really struggled, and that was such a big story that on the first day of the Australian Open, I moved my sports bulletins out to the Australian Open, and I ran with rugby first. And that's unheard of. That's the Eddie effect.
Wow, that is interesting, because we talked to Matt Williams a good bit about how the game needed something, and maybe the messiah figure of Eddie Jones is going to fix that. Just to wrap up on the tennis, the women's semi-finals at this stage, it's very difficult to pick a winner from that. What do you think is going to happen there?
I think that Elena Rybakina has been so outstanding, and I think she's very motivated, because she's a reigning Wimbledon champion that just manages to creep under the radar. She isn't even scheduled in the high-profile matches, despite she's the reigning Wimbledon champion. Now, I think there's a reason for that, Ger, because when she won Wimbledon, of course, Russian and Belarusian players had been banned from the tournament, and she was born in Moscow, but changed her affiliation to Kazakhstan a number of years ago. But she was in a tough position at that tournament of almost, I felt like she didn't want to talk about herself. She didn't want her story to be known, and she even had to face questions about that when she won. So she's just gone under the radar. She's been so impressive here. It's so open, though. Aryna Sabalenka, she has been so impressive. Now, 12 months ago in Australia, Aryna Sabalenka could barely serve. She had massive serving yips. Everyone was talking about it. In fact, they're still asking her about it, because the turnaround has been so great. She won a tournament in the build-up to the Australian Open in Adelaide, and she looks in amazing form. And we've always known she has the game to win a Grand Slam, but she's struggled mentally with those serving yips. But it looks like it's all coming together for her. So Rybakina as a rank, I think Rybakina is going through to the final, and I'd be backing Sabalenka, even though Magda Linette, being in the final four, she's 30 from Poland, and she's into a semi-final of a Grand Slam. She's never even been past the third round at a Grand Slam before, and she is not the Polish player we thought we'd be talking about. We thought it would be all about the world number one, Iga Świątek. So it's been really surprising. I will say one thing about women's tennis right now. I miss the Williams sisters. They had a star power that they brought to events, like a vibe. Like when the Williams are in the house, things are different. Just like when the big three are in the house, we're down to the big one with Rafa's departure. And there's a different vibe. You know, when you don't have those, and particularly Serena, an icon of the sport is missing, and that star power is gone. So what I'd really love to see in women's tennis, because Ash Barty, she won a Grand Slam on 3 different surfaces, so a surface slam, then retires after the Australian Open. Tennis needs a superstar, like an Emma Raducanu or a Coco Gauff. I would have loved to see them go further into the draw, Ger and Shane, just because they have that bit of star power about them, and that's a little bit missing this year.
All right, Catherine, great to have you with us as ever. Thanks a million for making the time for us. Cheers.
Thank you, Ger and Shane.
That's Catherine Murphy on the line from Australia this morning at the Australian Open in Melbourne. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Time for me to tell you about the fact that Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Braeburn Coffee is coming to an Applegreen store near you, with new Braeburn locations popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. Now, after this break, we're going to switch our attention back to what's going to happen with Glen and Kilmacud Crokes. What are the options? We'll be joined by the former GAA president, Nickey Brennan. Back in a moment.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB GAA.
So far as the GAA are concerned, in this matter, it's nothing to do with the individual teams. This is to do with the GAA protecting its own rules, protecting its own reputation.
Delivery are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, and they have a legitimate position to challenge that due to the incompetence of the GAA.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Yeah, 27 minutes past 8 on this Wednesday morning, so to be on time to continue. As Ger said, the Glen Kilmacud Crokes follow. Delighted to welcome to the show this morning the former GAA president, Nickey Brennan. Morning, Nickey, how are things?
Very good, guys.
This is a bit of a mess, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I suppose it's one way of putting it, all right. But it was always going to be a process. I think we've been hearing a lot in the last couple of days about Rule 6.44, but I don't think anybody's mentioned Rule 6.43. It says the award of a game rests with the committee in charge, acting on the referee's report. So we have to say that referees' matches are decided ultimately by what's in the referee's report. 99.999% of the time, that's pretty routine. We all know the result. The referee will file the report. That's the end of it. But if there is something that has happened in the game, the committee in charge have an obligation to wait to see would the referee include anything in his report. Now, I have no idea if Derek O'Mahony included anything in his report in relation to the substitutions that took place in Croke Park on Sunday. And actually, while I was in Croke Park on Sunday, I was tied up doing interviews after the hurling game, so I didn't get to see any of the football game. But it's pretty obvious that extra players were used at the end of the game and could be deemed to have had a bearing on it. So they had to wait for the referee's report. And if the GAA, in my view, acted purely on the basis of what they saw themselves, they could be setting a very dangerous precedent. Now, I think, so that's why the onus is put on Glen. This is not the first time this has happened. This is a common occurrence where the team that loses a game, if it feels it has lost the game in a manner that wasn't within the rules of the game, then they have the right to appeal. And I suppose that's the rationale behind it, because anything could happen if you just, if the committee in charge, in this case the Central CCCC, took upon themselves to make the decision to replay the game. It could open a big can of worms. And so I said that's my view of what the thinking was on it. Okay.
Can you explain the can of worms to us, though? Because I don't really understand what the can of worms is when a procedural issue like this, which is clear and the facts are agreed, everybody agrees, there's 16 men on the field when that ball is kicked in at the last moment. Once that is established, whether or not it's in the referee's report, apparently it wasn't, is the information that we're given, but maybe that's incorrect, that has been reported. But what kind of worms would there be if the GAA at that point, which under their rules they're entitled to, said, we think there's been an issue here, we're investigating it, and we'll have an announcement for you. Like, why? I suppose I get your point, right? That they're following part of their own rules, they're ignoring another part of the rules which would have allowed them to intervene. But it does speak to a lack of leadership in a situation where the biggest game of the year, has been tarnished?
I think you may put your finger on it there. You're talking about the biggest game of the year. Well, obviously the biggest game of the year in a club football context, of course, you're spot on there. I think the issue here is this was a high-profile game. It was pretty evident before the game, the final whistle was blown, that there was an issue in relation to the extra players on the field, particularly in relation to the last substitution, where the Kilmacud player that was supposed to come off was actually still on the field and in a prominent position to defend their goal. So that's a fair point that you're making there. But because this game was high profile, it was on TV, had multimedia coverage, it was very obvious to people that an indiscretion took place. So if the body controlling this game, the National CCCC, took the decision, the game has been replayed, full stop, and no more about it, that's fair enough on one hand, on one level. And you're correct that you could construe that absolutely from the rule. But what happens when we get down to lesser profile games where a club deems there is an indiscretion? There's no cameras, there's no reporters, the referee doesn't see it, and they feel that there's as much injustice on their side as well if the game is not replayed because the opposing team did have more than 15 players on the field. So I think that is the concern, and I'm only surmising here, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because
I'm thinking that's probably what the GAR are saying. And while the rule doesn't specifically state that, I think they're cautioning on the fact that if they make a decision on this, then that's why I'm saying it could potentially open a can of worms down for lesser games where there's no TV coverage, no radio coverage, and there is no way of knowing that it actually happened other than if the referee puts it in his report.
Are you surprised, Nickey, that the GAA haven't been more vocal, that we haven't heard from the President or the Director General in recent days?
Well, not really. I mean, the point about it is when it comes to matters like this, it is the CCC they're the people who are dealing with the matter. It's not really up to the President or the Director General to interfere in the workings of a committee at this stage. I mean, it could potentially get to that at some stage, but I think it's up to the CCC. Bear in mind the referee's report probably was only submitted at the earliest on Monday, possibly Tuesday. So they have to work around that. I am quite sure that Derek Kent and his committee have been engaging in a conference call to discuss the matter and to consider their options and look at what the situation might be. But think back to the infamous Meath Louth game back at the time. A very similar scenario arose. Now, I know, to be fair, God rest him, Seamus Howland was a personal friend of mine, no longer with us. He would have engaged with me to see was there any possibility of maybe getting them to agree to a replay. Because his hands were tied, he felt his hands were tied as well on the basis that if the Leinster Council ruled that game must be replayed, it would have huge knock-on effects for games within nationally, not just within the province.
Yeah, I do wonder. That's an interesting point, right? In retrospect, wouldn't that have been the right thing to do, though? I think we all agree that a replay of that game would morally have been the right thing to do. And then if the rule book needs to catch up with that, you make changes. I think that the rule book is great, and obviously you need it in an organisation which has a gazillion games every year. But there are definitely moments where there's an opportunity to step forward and say there's a problem here with the rules, and there's a problem with the implementation of the rules, and we all need to do the right thing. Like we were asking earlier on, what's the right thing to do in this instance? If you strip away the rules and the procedures, what's your instinct? As a GAA man to the core, what's your instinct about what the right thing to do here is?
Yeah, the right thing to do here is replay the game. I have no problem saying that whatsoever. But you made a very good point there about the rules. We're going to have the GAA Congress in a couple of weeks' time. Now, it's probably too late to put motions into that. But I wish people now who are talking about the rules and that the GAA that needs clarity, let them sit down and let them put wording on the rule that would enable what you've just said to happen. But bear in mind that from an association point of view, while the club final is the pinnacle of any club player's game, the GAA would look on it that it's no different than if it was a Junior B game down in some other county as well. The same set of rules must apply. You can't have two different rule books. So how that would be interpreted within a rule to deal with something that is morally right that there be a replay, but it's not just as simple as that. If you're playing around with the rules like that, you certainly will be causing yourself some difficulty to officers around the country in their interpretation of that rule relating to their own competition. So that's how I see it, notwithstanding the moral issue that you quite rightly bring forward. And
is there something in, I don't know, streamlining the substitution process? Because it is chaos.
I mean, obviously, I mean, the bottom line is that last Sunday was a clear case of the probably the whole refereeing team in Croke Park. There's two issues I'd say here. Maybe they needed to be clear. They needed to be absolutely clear that the player going on did not go on the field until the player that was going off. Now, that didn't happen. However, we all know that in the closing stages of games, and not just in All-Ireland finals, there is a clamour to put on additional players. It seemed to be running down the clock or whatever it might be. So it becomes very tricky that no matter what the fourth official might say to the player, you can't go on yet, the guy is probably 20 yards in on the field because he's been roared at by his manager. All very understandable in a panic situation to get in and defend there quick. And I cannot see how Mullen was still on the field and defending the goal area. He probably didn't even get the message to actually come off. So there probably needs to be something looked at there, that the referee simply does not allow play to continue until he gets the thumbs up from the fourth official that everything has been done according to plan, because of the general pandemonium that's at the end of games when they're very tight.
I'm aware we're talking hypotheticals here to some extent, Nickey, but so Glen have objected to the result. So say now the CCCC come out and say it's a replay. What happens if Kilmacud turn around and say, no, we're not going to play a replay?
That's a good question. You'll be into probably some new territory there. And this is obviously the ball is now very much back in the CCC court now that Glen have formally, we all know what the options of the CCC are. In my view, the option is likely, and again I'm speculating here, I know no more about it than you guys do, that there will be a replay. Now, Kilmacud have a couple of days to assess that situation and put their own, and it might very well be that you'll be having a conversation with somebody else in a couple of days about what decision that Kilmacud makes if they're not amenable to a replay. So, look, that's maybe hypothetical as of now, but it's not an unreasonable issue to be putting forward.
So you got a contingency plan for all outcomes here. Like, more than likely, I don't know, what's your instinct about what the CCC would do under these circumstances? Because there's a lot of wiggle room for them in the rules. They can forfeit the game, they can fine Kilmacud but allow Kilmacud to continue to have it, and they can just allow Kilmacud, or they can order the replay. I don't think they can just... so the fine would be Kilmacud are champions. Is there a scenario where pressure is brought to bear on Glen for them to be offered the replay but to turn it down as well?
I suppose there's all sorts of possibilities, but I don't think there's pressure per se on Glen. I think in fairness to Glen, they were left in a very tricky position and it wasn't easy. Their manager after the game more or less indicated that was it, this result was there and that's the end of it. But to be fair to the club, when they sat down and analysed this and realising that the only way the matter could be dealt with, unless just was forgotten about, was to lodge an objection. They knew that because they would have engaged with Croke Park, I suspect, on the Monday. So there's no fault on Glen's part here. It's not an easy thing for a club to lodge an objection here, and they do have my sympathies, in fairness. But equally in Kilmacud's Cork's case, they didn't go out to intentionally put in players. I can say that was a level of panic set in across the sideline. They got subs in. They needed to get players off. It didn't all happen in the sort of unison that you would normally see attached to substitutions because of it was a panic situation. And bear in mind that Kilmacud had a similar situation last year in the final against Kilcoo as well, where it was a late score changed the whole outcome of the game. So naturally enough, they were in a situation where they wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen again. So I wouldn't be casting blame on anybody here. It's a thing that happens in GA matches. And it'll happen again in the next couple of weeks in some other county, in some other game, or through the course of 2023. It's the nature of what we're doing, but we just have to make sure that the whole approach to substitutions maybe is more formally organised. And if it means holding up the game, particularly in the latter 3 or 4 or 5 minutes when that panic sets in and the tight game, so be it if that's what a referee has to do. And I suspect referees will possibly be getting, well, at inter-county level at least, getting instructions to just be a bit more vigilant when it comes to that part of the officiating.
That is ridiculous though, Nickey, isn't it, that the onus was put on Glen. They were clearly not happy as a club when they released their statement to say that the onus was put on them. It's farcical that the GAA would, as we were saying yesterday, wash their hands of it. And look, it doesn't matter what the precedent is or the fact that they feel like they might have to intervene in junior games across the country if they intervene here. The GAA should never have left this up to Glen.
Well, look, I can understand you making that comment, and many people will agree with you there. I'm just trying to put forward a case of where the GA are concerned that if they just took the decision themselves centrally that this game is going to be replayed without any recourse to either of the two teams because they saw that because they have the proof on television, I think it would set an enormous precedent in terms of the outcomes of games and make it very difficult for county boards in particular, where the majority of our games are not televised or not covered and may not even have a media person at those games, and it becomes a can of worms where there is people come in even neutrals who might have been at the game can come in and verify, there was a 16 person on the field and it did impact the potential outcome of a game. I think that's the concern the GA have, and if the rules have to be tidied up to accommodate that potential tricky situation, well then so be it, let the rules be changed. But look, it's not hard and fast. It's very easy to say the GA should have just stepped in, and morally maybe you're right. There's certainly that side of it, but I can see the bigger picture and the impact it potentially would have on games around the country from here on in if that decision was taken, and that's why it hasn't been taken in the past. There's precedents here of where it's often said a county might offer to replay a match, and it happened in some cases, but that's just the situation the GA found itself in, and it can have some criticism for that, but I can understand the process the way it panned out in the last couple of days.
Do you think, Nickey, that is your instinct that the game will be replayed and that Kilmacud will play the game as opposed to refusing to play the game?
I'm purely speculating here, lads. I'm purely speculating. I think the game will probably be played in obviously not I don't think this coming weekend, possibly the weekend after next, and obviously it'll whatever the outcome will come. We'll just have to wait and see. And it's purely me speculating here on a Wednesday morning. What might the outcome be? Maybe there'll be developments during the course of today as the CCC meets. Maybe Kilmacud might take a different reaction to being asked to play a replay. I don't know, but I'm purely speculating, toss of a coin. There will be a replay, and it'll be a dinger of a game again.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the most high-profile club game in a very long time.
I would think so. I think it would be. Now the speculation will probably end up in where will they have the replay? Will they play the next one up the country someplace? So look, it's going to mean many column inches, many minutes of talk on radio and TV for the next while. Sure, it does create an extra bit of buzz at this time of the year, maybe that wasn't expected.
100%. Nickey, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
You're welcome, guys.
It's Nickey Brennan, former president of the GAA there, says, giving us his views. Chris F says, what if Glen were winning the replay, coming down to the last kick? What would stop Kilmacud just putting in an extra player and just forcing another replay? I think in that instance, if it didn't have a material impact, then you have the material impact issue, right? Like in this instance, we don't know if it had a material impact or not. And Nickey rightly brings up, so if the excuse is it's caused by panic, is that panic then transmitted to the players who are thinking about Kilcoo and last minute goals in the same stadium, in the same, what's to say
same end of the same stadium, yeah.
And maybe they would have cleared it and they didn't need the 16th man. But the right thing has been done. The appeal has been lodged. It's up to the CCCC now to make some decisions and convince everybody that the right thing to do is to play the game and not like both teams might go, no, not doing it. Taking my ball, I'm going home.
The news now isn't the CCCC announcing the replay, because that's what we're expecting now. What comes after that is the interesting part. Whether Glen or Kilmacud
decide not to play.
Well, yeah, one of them or both of them or either of them, or if they both agree to the replay, grand. But I have my suspicions now. One of them is going to decide not to play the replay, and I don't know which one.
It's 8:43. It's time for John Duggan's Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
Oh, wow! In the words of Family Guy's Glen Quagmire, all right.
That's the best headline.
That's your headline?
Glen Quagmire, yeah.
Glenn Close was Phil Egan's.
But that was a close to Glen Quagmire, but not no cigar, which we'll all be smoking after this. So the Farmers Insurance Open, as you all know, starts today, don't you? Because the NFL is on Sunday and the US TV companies want to have the golf now moved from today until Saturday. So this is a Wednesday to Saturday tournament which starts 5 o'clock Irish time today. No joy the first 2 weeks, don't worry, 40 to 50 tournaments this year. It's a long-term game. Tie for 18th, I think, was the best we had last week. So look, we go again this week. We had the winner of this tournament last year, Luke List. So I've picked a good few golfers, but we're just going to concentrate on 3 for this slot this morning. The headline tip for the Farmers Insurance Open is Maverick McNeely. Of course it is, at 30-1 for 5 each way. Maverick McNeely, whose father, I think, ran Sun Microsystems, one of the richest men in the United States, doesn't even need to play golf, but he's so good at it, he does it. He's from the area, California. This tournament being played at Torrey Pines near San Diego, and Maverick McNeely was formerly the #1 amateur in the world. He was a really good college golf player, was on the Walker Cup team with Scotty Scheffler, Will Zalatoris, Colin Morikawa back in 2017. And Maverick McNeely has never been happier with his game. 3 top 10s in his last 7 starts, including a tie for 7th on his last event in Hawaii, the Sony Open. He puts better than any other player in this field on the greens they're going to encounter this week at the South Course, Poa Anagu greens. He was 15th in this tournament in 2020. He was tied 8th going into the final round last year before slipping back, but I think he's playing better than he's ever has, Maverick McNeely. So he's a long hitter, good putter, 30-1 for 5 each way. I think he can upset the favourites this week.
Is that the best golf name, Maverick McNeely?
Duffy Waldorf was always good. Fred Funk was always a good one. Dickie Pride, always like that one as well.
Fuzzy Zeller.
Fuzzy Zeller, that's it. Plenty of...
a few corkers in there.
A few corkers, yeah, for the Americans. But Maverick McNeely, who's got a brother, I think, called Scout McNeely.
What did you say, Dickie? No, not Dickie what?
Dickie Pride.
Dickie Pride.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I prefer Maverick to Scout.
Yeah.
You know, you go ahead there first and get shot, and I'll be the one that, flies in my fighter jet and rescues everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Maverick McNeely, the headliner, 5.
He's about the right age to be named after Top Gun, right?
I'd love to ask him.
Yeah.
Maverick, he has to be. What year is he born in?
He's a real underdog story, of course.
So I don't know what year that equates to.
Maverick McNeely. I'm going to find out more about this guy. So he was born in 1995.
Hopefully he won't be goosed by the end of this.
Hey.
Oh, yay. Will Zalatoris is the second one. Of all the principals with Ram, Morikawa, Justin Thomas all in this week, I think Zalatoris is the best of them at 16-1 for 3 each way. Lost in a playoff in this event last year. Loves the South Course. Won in August at the FedEx St. Jude. We had him that week. Then he hurt his back, but his back is now okay. He says he's healthy. He's had 8 rounds in the 60s for his 2 events. Will Zalatoris, the best player tee to green on the tour last year. If the putts can drop, I think 16-1. He's one of the solid guys around the top. And then the third one is Taylor Pendrith for 2 each way at 66-1. Canadian Taylor Pendrith was 16th in this last year in his first appearance. A really long hitter of the golf ball. I think he had 5 top 13 finishes in 6 starts last season after coming back from an injury. Taylor Pendrith is one of these players I think is going to definitely win this year on the tour. I think he's a good each way price at 66-1. So these are the 3 this week. And we also have a new podcast for Virtual Insanity. So I picked a few others, and the bonus content is on the podcast network right now. So there's a few other golfers and a bit of rationale for a few other players on the podcast network for OTB. So we have these 3 lads, the 3 main ones, but also the bonus players, which you want to listen to if you want to get a full appraisal of the Farmers Insurance Open.
JD, good stuff.
All right, lads.
Thanks very much for that. Any further thoughts on...
Well, the right thing's been done to put it back into the hands of the GAA. And I think that the lesson out of all of this is that there needs to be more of a deliberative process around substitutions going forward in all levels of the association. And whether it's like soccer where you hold up a board and a player goes off and it's logged and then you got to...
I do think, so Martin Brennan makes 2 points in the papers today. One I completely disagree with. One I very much agree with. It's the amount of time. He sat and recorded the amount of time. The whole point of the substitutions coming on at the end, as is explained afterwards, is to kill the clock, And it works. It really works. But it shouldn't work. It's like the clock should stop or there should be...
You need a hooter in Gaelic games now, like the ladies.
Well, I think that if every club game had an extra automatic... 7 minutes, was the minimum amount of added time, then all of a sudden this wouldn't happen. You have to
World Cup added time.
Exactly, it really works. It really stops the nonsense of those meaningless substitutions or whatever. And loads of different conversations need to happen off the back of this. That would be one. That would be a fairly automatic. Every single substitution that gets made. Every time you make it, we're going to add 45 seconds minimum. So then all of a sudden you're like, how am I going to make these? Because I have to defend for another 90 seconds if I make these 2 subs.
Are you better making the subs in the the 59th minute or the 62nd, 63rd? I wonder which way it wastes more time. Like just before they announce the added time, or is it within the added time? See, clubs and GA managers have worked all this out. They know how to get around the rules and bend them and time waste. Like Kilmacud that said themselves after the match that was the purpose.
The GA need to do what they did in Brexit, take back control.
That worked out really well.
Did you talk much about McElroy and Reid?
A little bit.
Yeah,
What do you,
I just think it's funny.
Nathan's a bit sceptical that it's been blown into too much here, but I'm not sure. I think that, Patrick Reid is he's an excitable chap.
You cannot mention Patrick Reid now without getting sued, so be very careful.
Careful now.
Well, he lost his first case.
I think there's another one brewing, and I read about another one last week.
Right.
I think without his name even being mentioned. So maybe I should even mention. Imagine I got stuck with a $2 billion lawsuit for mentioning Patrick Reid and saying something about him at the Dubai.
You'd be working overtime, John.
There'd be a GoFundMe, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Virtual insanity it suddenly isn't virtual. Nathan's golf name suggestion is Tag Ridings.
Tag Ridings.
Yeah, Tag Ridings. Yeah.
That's a natural name.
That is, one that he was a journeyman pro on the PGA Tour for many years. I'll have thought of one by the time I walk out the studio.
He's from Oklahoma, that explains it.
Fielding Brewbaker.
Don't remember him now.
There's a Brewbaker's coffee shop in Dublin.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Could be connection.
Scoff name.
Right.
All right, lads.
John, good stuff. One of the things that happened this week was one of our listeners got in touch.
Oh, yeah, they did. You might enjoy this, John, as well. So, Ger's a fan of limericks. We all are. Not Limerick the county. Well, Limerick the county is brilliant as well, but Limerick's the poem. The manner of poem.
You got another thing coming in here,
We've got another couple of things coming here, John, so strap yourself in. John Lee, he got in touch, one of our viewers. I think we can have it up on screen. It was an Arsenal-based limerick. Arteta's boys triumphant once more. So this was after Arsenal beat United the weekend. And so a great game of ball. Both sides gave it their all. But the Red Devils failed and the Gunners prevailed. Once again, Arteta stands tall. So this gave us an idea. We were like, do you know what? We should be getting more listeners to send us in limericks on any topic.
Oh, what type of limericks?
Shit ones. So shit limericks, I guess, is the name of the...
Specifically, yeah. We don't want your good ones.
No.
Definitely
don't want your good ones.
Just like shit London Guinness, shit Limerick.
Essentially, yeah. Yeah. Shit Irish limericks. And Cameron Hill, our own Cameron Hill, we said, you know what, this Glen Kilmacud stuff, it's not going to go away all week, so we'll write a few limericks about it. So Cameron penned one, which I think we can get up on screen. There once was a team from Glen who got to a final, and then they well took their shot, but it all came to naught against Kilmacud Crokes extra men. It's not bad. I have to say, it's not bad. If you're watching right now, keep the comments coming in. We've got a few more for you. Cameron also brought our attention to this great Brendan Behan quote. So, as you'll see on screen, the discussion reminded me of a story about Brendan Behan. The writer was once invited to Oxford to take part in a debate about the difference between prose and poetry. His opponent spoke for almost 2 hours. Behan rose to his feet and promised to be brief. He recited an old Dublin rhyme. There was a young fella named Rollocks who worked for Ferrier Pollocks. As he walked on the strand with a girl by the hand, the water came up to his ankles. That, declared Behan, is prose, but if the tide had been in, it would have been poetry. So I've decided to try a couple of...
that was like his Seagulls Followed the Trawler moment.
Yes, exactly. My first effort here is probably prose along the same line as Behan. The Glen boys first took their beating. The glass broke, so Malachy's weeping. Kilmacud had their plan and a sneaky extra man, so was it a case of pure shithousery? That's kind of along the lines of Behan. Another effort. They probably get slightly better, I hope, if I can read these properly. Glen were a bit wayward with the boot, but the margins were still minute. 2 Crokes lads called ashore, the tannoy ignored, and the game's now in disrepute.
Excellent.
It's not bad, is it?
Yeah.
My third and final effort this morning. Kilmacud are a true game machine, winning just seen as routine. Well, it is when you've Mannion and Walsh, his companion, made sure when you play with 16.
Ooh, harsh.
Very good.
Very pro-Glen.
So there you go. It's quite pro-Glen. But I mean, if people want to send in some pro-Kilmacud limericks this
we
morning,
will read them out.
We will read them out.
Don't worry.
So get your creative juices flowing. It's our new segment called Shit Limericks, which we'll do however regularly we see fit. We'll get a sting and we'll get some music for the next time as well.
It's 8:53 this morning. Alisson is by far the best keeper this season. Surprised the Liverpool fans didn't pick him. The Liverpool fan didn't pick him. They'd be way worse without him. This is Nathan's team of the year. Laughable. Shaw, Martinez and Varane have been outstanding. Wouldn't swap them 3 for any on his team of the season, says Philip Nolan, who's a Manchester United fan, obviously. The Athletic reported that Queen Keller has expressed the desire to play some more football.
I mean,
is that what your subscription's for?
Is this
for who? For whom?
Well, it's a good point. Is he actually asking for a move in the last week of the transfer window, or is it like you got to prepare yourselves, so start buying a goalkeeper because I want to go out and loan next season?
Needs to play.
I don't know who he goes to though.
Well, you know, Bazunu bloodied but unbowed last night, playing in a team there's been a lot of criticism of Bazunu. I think it's massively unfair. It'd be interesting to see if he has a season in the Championship next year. If they do go down, is he the best goalkeeper in the Championship by a mile? He may well be, but he's not going to lose his place. It doesn't look like.
No.
So if Kelleher was to play and get a move, that could be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, if Dean Henderson doesn't stay put at Forest, if he comes back to United or moves elsewhere, then maybe there'd be an opening there ahead of Wayne Hennessy for Caoimhín Kelleher. Club like that. I mean, he doesn't want to be a backup anymore. He's not going to Tottenham. Unless they get rid of the release, so.
He's going to play. Falty Bemmy says, I love Owen's poems. Owen's poems, what a great name, except this isn't Owen.
Both ginger people think I'm ginger on air, and then they meet me in person and they're like, oh, you're actually not ginger. You're actually reasonably strawberry blonde. So apparently my hair looks different.
Not that there's anything wrong with either of these
No, neither. But
they all have lovely bottoms.
They do, of course. But Owen is a good wordsmith as well. Kerry and Monaghan, two great poems or counties for poetry.
I need a drink at this stage.
John, you'd be a good man for a limerick, I'd say. So if you can get,
I'll have a think.
Yeah. On any topic, really.
Good stuff, JD. Thanks very much. More from John, of course, on Saturday afternoon, and you can subscribe to the podcast of Virtual Insanity as well for your weekly fix. Michael Kennedy says, are we getting to the point where teams will scrutinise every second of video from a match and object? Look, the final whistle went, the ref didn't see it, just fine Kilmacud and move on. I see plenty of people saying that the impact of this is minor. And McGreal is on Twitter from the Mayo News saying he doesn't think it made any difference to the outcome.
How do you know? No one knows.
What if they'd blown up a minute early in last year's hurling final and Ballygunner hadn't scored their last second winner?
Yeah, we'd be saying it had no impact. Sure, Ballyhill won by 2.
Weird stuff happens.
Yeah. You got to expect the unexpected, especially
you just have to play the game out.
Yeah, it's chaotic at that stage of the game, so anything can happen. Now, look, the reality and the likelihood is that nothing would have happened had Kilmacud only had 15 men on the pitch, but that's the point. We don't know.
Exactly. We don't know, and in the interest of fairness and the integrity of the competition, all you got to do is make sure that it's played out. Now, at this stage, if it doesn't get played out, that would be not great, and won't reflect well on whoever makes the decision not to play it.
Oh, that's going to be juicy the next 24 hours.
8:56 this morning. You're very welcome to OTB AM if you've just joined us. We've had a really good show so far. You can go back and subscribe to our podcast feed. That's the OTB AM podcast feed. You'll get that on the OTB Sports app. You'll also get it on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And we're live each morning with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Orlagh Farmer, recently retired 6-time All-Ireland winner with Cork. Orlagh, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
The decision to finish up, was it straightforward? Was it complicated? Had you reached the natural end, or were you thinking, I might give this one more year?
I think every year now it's one more year.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly the last year, I think it was kind of on my mind. And I suppose I have been on the road a long time as well. I was actually thinking back there, I've never missed a championship of football since I was 13 years of age. So it's been a long but a very enjoyable journey. And I think it just comes to a stage, I suppose I'm getting a bit older now. I turned 30 last year, and I think the body is slowing down a bit. And I think maybe I wasn't getting the same buzz as I used to as well. When I was a bit younger, just the kind of championship buzz feeling as much this year as I have previously. So, I think I have kind of other plans as well with my career and things. So I think it was just the right decision for this year coming, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter as well.
When you say you haven't missed a championship season, does that mean you haven't been injured for that whole time as well? You actually managed to play every year?
Yeah. So fortunately enough, I had the opportunity under 14 the whole way up to play in the red and white jersey.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, it's been a massive privilege to represent my county, and ever since I was a young girl, that's all I ever wanted, was to run out under the tunnel in Crow Park and with all the girls I looked up to, and thankfully we had that success over the years as well.
Well, that 6 in a row era, Orlagh, 2011 to 16. I know Orlagh Finn retired as well just a few days before yourself. So it's the end of an era in some ways.
Yeah, it is sad. It is very emotional, and especially because it's just such a massive part of my life, both on and off the pitch as well. And Orlagh, speaking of Orlagh Finn as well, we've been best friends since we were 13. We both played together the whole way up, all the way. we kind of started together and we finished together. So it has been very emotional the last few days. But I suppose, look, that's sport, that's life. You can't keep holding on forever. I actually remember a few years ago, Eamon Ryan, our coach, he used to always kind of say to us, never take this for granted. Like, you'll never do this training session again. You'll never play this match again. And you've only such a short span in your life that you can play at such a high level. So just to maximise that and kind of make the most of it. I think I don't really appreciate that until you come away from it, really. So look, as I said, that's just part of life. That's sport, and I am ready now, which makes it a bit easier. Like, I've come to the fifth stage of grief, which is acceptance. So I've accepted the fact now that I'll no longer have the red and white jersey on the pitch, but for sure I'll be supporting on the stand.
Do you take it for granted at the time, Orla? Because I'm thinking back, like that first All-Ireland win in 2011, when you're doing the parade before the match, you're not to know that it's the first of 6 All-Ireland wins in a row at the time. So, I mean, do any particular moments like that stand out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been brilliant. Like, it's to win 6 All-Ireland medals in a row. Never ever thought that was possible. I suppose I was lucky enough to come into an already successful Cork ladies football team with the likes of Breach Corkery and Rena Buckley, Reid Stack, Valerie Mulcahy, all those girls. Like, they were phenomenal, and they had won 5 in a row before I even came into the panel. So I suppose we were lucky to kind of come into that winning mindset and that momentum. But I mean, it's been brilliant over the years. And I think when I think of standout moments like that in the All-Irelands, definitely the first one, because 2011 was my first All-Ireland, and it was a dream come true. I think as well the 2014 All-Ireland, when we were down against Dublin, 10 points with like 15 minutes to go. I think everyone can remember that game. That was definitely a standout game as well. Just the sheer excitement and joy of coming back and beating the Dubs by a point as well. And I think 2016, the 6th All-Ireland, for me personally, meant a lot, particularly as my family were all there as well. And I have a really vivid memory of that game, and I'll just never forget the hooter going off the last 10 seconds. That was just a special moment. And looking up at the stand, just because, years prior to that, I was sitting in the stand. I was the young girl with my parents watching the Cork ladies, going out winning the Brendan Martin, and all of a sudden I just had that kind of moment where I looked up at the stand with the last 10 seconds to go, and that was special for me because my dreams had come true essentially, and I really, really appreciated and enjoyed that game as well.
We should be introducing you, I suppose, as Dr. Orlagh Farmer, not necessarily just Orlagh, but because you tweeted at the, when you were announcing your retirement, you tweeted, looking forward to the next chapter, inspiring the younger generation to participate, stay involved, and most importantly, enjoy sport, and that's a key word. So you're a lecturer in sport education as well. You have a PhD in this topic, so I know keeping and getting young girls involved in sport is very, very important to you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's so I've been lucky that my career on the pitch has kind of translated to my career off the pitch as well, and empowering girls and coaches and teachers through sport has always been a passion of mine, and I hope to continue that onto the next chapter now, with some travel and with some projects that I have in mind as well. But I suppose speaking on the topic of girls in sport, like from my own PhD, some of the findings that came through for me, and it's important to kind of note as well, particularly for coaches, that when I went out and asked girls, like, why are you playing? What do you enjoy most about sport? Like, the number one thing is having fun with their friends. Like, that was a dominant theme coming through. I think it's important as well, and obviously girls are competitive and they want that challenge and they want to get the best out of themselves as well. But I do think it always falls back to the friendships and the memories. And even for me personally, like, I mean, I've 6 All-Ireland medals, but to be honest, like, the medals don't really mean anything to me at the end of the day. It's friendships, and it's the memories that I've made and the people that I've been surrounded with. That's what I take from playing with Cork over the years, and that's what I'll continue to take for the rest of my life essentially. So it's important. I think sometimes we can get caught into winning, but at the end of the day, like, we have to listen to what young girls want as well, and they want to feel good about themselves at training. They want to be with their friends, And obviously it's fun to win as well, and they want to enjoy that challenge. And on the other side then, you know, when asking why are you dropping out and what's stopping girls from getting involved, ironically it's the other end of the stick. It's lack of enjoyment, coaches being too strict, you know, the environment may be too competitive. Girls like competitiveness, but maybe perhaps too competitive at a younger age, and this notion of confidence as well, kind of skill related confidence. You know, if they're kind of comparing themselves to their friends and they feel that they're not as good as their friend at hand passing or kicking the ball, that can actually be a barrier as well for young girls. So I think really it's just important to educate coaches and teachers and players so that we can get more girls involved. Because I think at the moment, I think it's 1 in 2 girls are dropping out of sport, and like that's such a worrying statistic, such a high and worrying statistic. So I suppose really it's trying to, you know, what can we do to try and get more girls to first of all come to the game and introduce, you know, and get them involved, but also to stay involved in sport.
We've loads of coaches watching this morning. What's the best bit of advice, knowing what you know and with the data and information that you have and that you've processed, what's the best bit of advice to, like, how do they make it fun?
So I think fun is a very elusive term, like it's very broad, but I think, you know, people forget that it's fun to win as well. It's fun for girls could mean, you know, wearing the jersey, wearing their club gear around the place. It could also mean, you know, challenging themselves in terms of skill. You know, there's loads of meanings to fun. It's not as if you're just kind of going in and playing a game of duck, duck, goose or something. Like it's actually very relevant to, you know, getting the best out of yourself. But I think really it's maximizing your time. Like I always say when it comes to coaching, you know, maximum participation in your 60-minute session. How many minutes are the girls or boys, are they actually have the ball or the hurley in their hand? You know, that are you maximizing that time? How many minutes of the session are you talking as a coach? You know, that are they coming out? For some, that may be the only 60 minutes a week or 2 times a week that they're actually getting skill related practice, and that deliberate practice as well. So I think really it's like, how are you maximizing your time? But also, you know, are you providing your players with that kind of reinforcement, that feedback, that encouragement, and that social support? For girls particularly, you know, they need that kind of validation, they need that feedback, they need that communication. So it's about kind of effectively communicating and providing that feedback, as well as opportunities to practice the skill, having that deliberate practice as well. But I always say, you know, are they leaving the training session with a smile on their face? Like, even if it's just having a bit of a laugh at the end of the training session, if it's doing a bit of a fun team challenge game, even if it's just for 3 minutes of that 60 minutes, then you've your job done, and they're leaving and they will want to come back the next training session the next day, and that will affect their motivation, their intrinsic motivation. So really it's actually very simple. Like, you don't need to change the world, and you know, it's just small steps like that, like effective communication, deliberate practice for skill, and making sure that they're leaving the training session feeling good about themselves. I think if you can do that, then I think, you know, a lot goes to, you know, I think it'll be brilliant. And I think that girls particularly will enjoy the training sessions more, and I think that they will get a lot more out of it and they'll want to come back.
So you join one of the winningest teams in Irish sports history as essentially a kid and grow up while at the same time studying what it is that makes sport accessible and successful. It sounds a little bit like you kind of looked into the fact that there was a kind of coaching savant in charge of the team. It sounds like, listening to your teammates, that you all had that sense of enjoyment at the end of all your training sessions. Now, there's loads of different reasons for that. Obviously, a successful team, very, very driven characters, incredibly talented women who were already high achievers. But it kind of seems like what you're talking about, Eamon Ryan kind of had this sense of just a almost innate ability to do the things that you're now codifying years later.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Eamon, speaking of Eamon, you know, he was such a positive influence on all of us, and will continue to be a positive influence as well going forward. And I think really with Eamon, it was just all about simplicity. You know, we'd be doing such basic skills, but we'd be doing them at such a high intensity and focus. But with Eamon, we always used to we'd be laughing when we're leaving the session. We'd always have some sort of a kind of fun relay or, a game, or we'd be kind of boxing each other or whatever on the pitch. And we'd always leave just with that kind of upbeat feeling. I think that's just really important because, as much as we want to win and as much as we want to win All Irelands, like at the end of the day, like sport is a hobby as well for us playing GAA, that, we do have other things going on in our life as well. And it is an important part of our life. But at the end of the day, having that kind of lightheartedness in the training session as well, it actually helps with bonding. It helps, the players to bond together as well. And that feel good environment. Like you can't beat it. You'll forget about the drills, but you won't forget about how you feel coming off the pitch. And I think that's really, really important for coaches and for teachers and for players to appreciate that as well.
Are we missing a trick, Orla, when it comes to PE in schools, especially for young girls? Like even when you look at Ireland in comparison to other EU countries, some of those stats you mentioned, like 20% of young girls not getting that very basic 60 minutes a week. That's pretty startling.
Yeah, it's very, very worrying. And it's the stats are high, the figures are high. That's the reality of it, unfortunately. And I think, I suppose in Ireland, in terms of PE, the PE system as well, it's great that we have Leaving Cert PE now on the curriculum and on the syllabus. I do think still that there's a lot more to do at kind of primary school level. That's kind of the first few years. That's so important when it comes to developing habits about sport and about physical activity. And I think compared to other countries, I know other countries would have, specific PE teachers actually to come into the schools, designated teachers to come into the schools to actually do PE. It's not really regulated in Ireland, in the sense of I could be getting 30 minutes a day of physical activity or PE in school. You could be getting an hour, someone else could be getting no PE a week, and that's not really regulated, which is quite worrying as well. And sometimes it can almost be too late when you get into secondary school, because you've developed your habits, you've developed your paradigms about sport and about your attitudes towards sport. So I do think that it is important, and from a younger age, and even younger children as well, even for parents and coaches to be developing that skill and developing that positive attitude from a young age.
Were you encouraged to play a multitude of different sports as you grew up? Was it a case of choosing one or another by a certain age, or how did your background develop?
I actually played camogie, and I was a big athlete as well in athletics. So I actually was a competitive runner first before I joined football, and I think that really stood to me. I think having the athletics background in particular, just in terms of the stamina and the fitness and the speed, I think definitely complemented my play, and would have been a big asset over the years of my play. That was the running game and the fitness side of things. But I do think it's important. I definitely, if it wasn't for athletics and if it wasn't for camogie and football, I think by playing multiple sports when you're younger, it's really advantageous. And I think that you develop more confidence and you develop more skill. Your skill is more versatile, and you also have, an enhanced social connection as well. So I do think it's all positive. From my own experience, I was actually running competitively in athletics. I was a cross-country runner at the same time, kind of as I got called up to the Cork Senior Ladies Football panel. So I actually there had been talks of an athletics scholarship as well at the time over to America to run professionally. But I'm glad that I chose the route of staying at home with the Cork ladies. But yeah, there are decisions that you will have to make, I suppose, kind of coming into your later teens. If you want to take, if you want to go a bit higher in terms of elite sport, you can't do it all. So there are decisions that I have to make. But I am grateful that I chose the path of ladies football, and thankfully we've had that success over the years. But I do think it's important for younger players definitely to maximise their experience really and the variety of sports.
How far did those conversations go? Were you on a trip to the States looking at facilities?
No, I was. There was talks about going to Kentucky, all right. But I think at the time, I suppose I was doing my Leaving Cert. I was also, just had been called up to the Cork panel. I think we were in the All Ireland that year, that I was doing my Leaving Cert as well. And I felt I was a bit young. I obviously had never lived out of home or anything. So I think, the team setup was the big draw to stay as well. Sometimes athletics can be, you're on your own a lot and it's kind of you against like everyone else. So I think having that team aspect was the big draw to stay in Cork and to play with the Cork ladies. Now it's something that I feel I have unfinished business in athletics as well. So maybe in a few years' time I might go back on the cross country field.
Right.
And it's hard to mix the two because cross country actually slows you down, whereas you need to be off the mark when it's football, because you need to be fast and turn and be agile. Whereas with cross country, you kind of have to build up your mileage, and that can slow your speed down. It's more stamina in cross country, so I couldn't really do both over the years. So I do think perhaps maybe I might have some unfinished business in the cross country world, and I may go back in the coming years.
We have other opportunities for you, apparently. David Riley's been in touch in the YouTube comments to say hi to Orlagh from everybody at Costa Gales in Marbella in Spain. Big game in Seville on the 11th of February. We'll pay for the flights. So there you go. Retirement. Sounds peachy.
I have a good relationship with Costa Gales. I actually spent some time over there last year to do a bit of coaching, and played with and trained with the boys and the girls over there as well. So a big shout out to Costa Gales and Justin McCarthy in particular. Yeah, they were very good to me.
See, I'm not surprised, Orla, that you didn't choose Kentucky, because Cork people love Cork. So I mean, Cork's better than Kentucky any day of the week. It's
absolutely
People's Republic. When you talk, Orla, about I remember you speaking before about those 6 All-Irelands and the fact that even during a lot of those All-Ireland runs, you wouldn't even have had hot food after training. You wouldn't have had travel expenses up until maybe recent years. So has the game come a long way in that regard? The women's game?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that it has made massive strides, particularly from my own experience playing. So since 2011 to now, like 2023, absolutely. Like in terms of just the LGFA have done incredible work. Even the little sponsorship, the 2020 campaign, all of that has really, really helped improve and promote the game. I remember in 2011, I think. That was the first All-Ireland. There was about maybe 18,000 at the game. And then, for that figure to be reaching almost 60,000 now is incredible. It really, really is incredible. Even with the GPA as well. I know the women's GPA and the GPA have emerged as well. And they have done really, really good work over the years. And I think the last 2 years now, we've been receiving expenses for the first time ever, which is really, really positive. And a credit to the GPA as well for organising all of that. It has been frustrating, I won't lie, over the years. But look, I suppose in terms of like the food situation and other aspects. But look, at the end of the day, like anything else should be a bonus. And Eamon used to always kind of remind us of that you're playing because you love to play and you're passionate about it. Anything else should be a bonus. But I do think, obviously, in terms of the necessities such as food and travel expenses, that should be catered for. And look, it is being catered for now, slowly but surely, which is a really, really positive step going forward.
We were talking about this in advance, and the whole so there's loads of different pillars here. There's like participation is hugely important. There's also the elite end of the sport that needs to be developed and financed properly. One of the next great frontiers is bringing through female coaches and managers, and we still seem to be a little bit behind the curve. And I don't know, is there something that can be done to hothouse talented coaches to make sure that we see that next generation coming through and just assuming the roles on the sidelines that they should be assuming?
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, there's definitely a lack of the female kind of, referees and coaches. A credit to Sport Ireland, in fairness, and they always try and encourage, and they run programs for like women's coaches and all that as well. So they're always kind of trying to improve things for women. I do think, we do need kind of more women role models as well. And I do feel that we kind of need more women to kind of stand up and speak about, even coaching, refereeing. I do think the role model aspect of it is massive. And whether that's at a grassroots level or county level or at a national level, I do think that kind of more women need to kind of speak up about it and share their experiences of coaching, refereeing, getting involved with teams in order for a bit of momentum, I think, to come. Like I often say as well with, over the years, when I look up at the stand when I'm playing, most of the time, like, you'd see men, the majority of the stand men, and there wouldn't be as many women supporting the women. So like sometimes the women actually have to get on board to support the women. You know, more women come to the matches, more women maybe speak up about their experiences of coaching or playing, to try and inspire and encourage women to get involved kind of at a higher level and an elite level as well.
Yeah, for sure. Orlagh, great stuff. Congratulations on an incredible career, like truly incredible. And it sounds like you're going to do more brilliant work in the world of sport in the future too. So best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Great to have you on this morning. That's Orlagh Farmer there, who has, as we said, just recently retired, a 6-time All-Ireland champion, and that is a glittering career by any stretch of the imagination. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It is 20 minutes past 9. On OTB Sports Radio for you. That's our live continuous feed of sports content. You can get that on the OTB Sports app, or you can get it on Go Loud as well. The Club Championship show is live from 10:30 this morning. Will O'Callaghan and Aisling O'Reilly hosting. It's a Ballyhale Shamrocks love-in following their All-Ireland Club win over Dunloy at the weekend. A number of players are going to be on the show, including the Ballyhale boss himself, Pat Hoban. You can tune in live at 10:30. TJ in the paper saying we didn't get enough respect. And like, they got a lot of respect. People are saying they're the greatest club team of all time.
As in since the final?
Well,
or before?
Last year they felt like Ballygunner were... So Ballygunner won, we won the previous two. What? Like, come on. It's funny. It's funny what drives the greats, you know.
Maybe Dunloy didn't get enough respect before the game.
I mean, they didn't, you know. But I would say Ballyhale got a lot of respect, and like
I love the siege mentality.
Well, when they were being congratulated on the steps last year by Ballygunner, they were taking offence to it. So whatever it took for them to get back up and get excited about winning this year, it worked. Somebody got the juices flowing of Colin Fennelly and TJ Reid in a year when he'd a lot going on. You know, there was a lot going on in his life.
Pretty busy. The whole siege mentality in Gaelic, especially in club football, I love it. Like Robbie Brennan having the Kilcoo lads on his phone, and TJ using Ballygunner as motivation.
It seems to be everywhere though. Like Joe Burrow has it. Everybody has said Joe Burrow is like this incredible talent who is going to win multiple Super Bowls. And over the last couple of weeks, they're like, oh, we didn't give you credit. I'm like, yeah, you did. You got loads of credit. Tom Brady had it. Yeah. You're the greatest of all time. You're the greatest of all time. Maybe Joe Montana's the same as you. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
But even the Bengals head coach, you know, when they had the clip of the inside the dressing room after the win of the Bills, Zach Taylor was kind of there on camera, and he knew he was on camera, and he was handing out the game balls and throwing them around the locker room, and everyone doubted us. They all doubted us. I don't know who doubted them. Maybe the Bills. Damar Hamlin train was rolling in. They
sold tickets for a game that was only going to happen if they lost. So if the Bills played the Chiefs, that game was going to be at a neutral field because of the Damar Hamlin thing, right?
Yeah, of course.
And they sold 50,000 tickets, and they were like, 50,000 tickets a game. So we're playing in that game. Yeah. Don't sell a single ticket. It's like, well, we have to it's for logistics reasons. It's like the parade for the Super Bowl champions is always announced a week before.
Yeah, you got to be prepared.
So that they know where there's going to be a parade where, you know, like 100,000 cops have to come out and stand there and watch a bunch of lunatics getting pissed and jumping off. Like, you know.
Traffic management.
There's something that has to go into that. But all the players are like, I can't believe it. Like, you know.
Whatever works for them.
Just don't tell anybody you're preparing it.
Yeah, of course.
Well, it
worked for the Bengals.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Worked for the Bengals, worked for Ballyhale, worked for Kilmacud.
Did it? It did in the end.
Yeah.
Or maybe it didn't. We'll see. Game's not over. 23 minutes past 9 this morning on OTB Sports Radio for the rest of the day. Michael Owen talking about life after football. Koi gig at 3 o'clock. They're talking this week about the slippy pitches and the propensity for ACL injuries, and really that just should not have happened. Our retro panel, the theme for the day, how we coach kids, and OTB Gold is Dennis Ogie-Moran in the week that his son has retired, an absolute legend of the game as well. That is a talented family. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best in the latest sports content. After the break, the Waterford-born La Rochelle winger Ike Anagu will join us on the line. Stay tuned.
Yeah, like 100%. Like there are players who come in and out of squads, in and out of teams, and sometimes it takes that for him to get another opportunity later on in the tournament and come in and really show and take the bull by the horns and show, like, this is why you should pick me. there will be loads of opportunities for players to be called into this squad between now and the middle end of March. So those players who come in will know that they have an opportunity there to show, be it in training or be it in a game or coming off the bench, that they have an opportunity, and that'll be exciting. Joey's still young. He will get another opportunity, and when he does, I have no doubt in my mind he'll light it up.
I was speaking to Jacob Stockdale after the Ulster game at the weekend, and he said about Andy Farrell keeping the faith in him, that he hadn't been putting in the best performances, so he was really thankful for that. Yeah, look, I know Jacob's been, like us at Ulster, we've been struggling to find a bit of form of recent, and like I said earlier on in the interview, you don't become a bad player overnight. You don't just all of a sudden lose everything you're capable of doing, and that's something I know Jacob's been working really hard off the pitch, not only just in rugby stuff, but everything else, trying to ensure that he's doing every single wee bit he can to get back to him playing at 100% of his best, and like what he's been doing off the pitch has been amazing to see the time and effort that he's been putting into things. And maybe this freshen up of an environment, a new stimulus, another challenge could be the thing to reignite him, to kind of let us see that electric Jacob back.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
It almost feels like we're in the running already, and every point, every match is being treated as this great test. There's still half a season to go. I'm not sure how long you can maintain that sort of nervous energy, that emotional intensity.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Big week for Waterford. Colleen Kuhn gets nominated for an Oscar, and Ike Anagu is in the Ireland under-20 squad. Ike, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
Yeah, good. That's the first time you've been mentioned in the same breath as an Oscar winner. Hopefully it won't be the last.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely does feel exciting. Yeah, it's a dream, actually.
Come here, how did that whole process actually happen? What's the bit where the Irish rugby selectors are made aware of the fact that you can play for Ireland, that you grew up for a period of time in Waterford?
I think so. Before I came to La Rochelle, we tried to actually go to Ireland first, so they were made aware of me about towards the end of 2021. I think Leinster and stuff were in contact with my agents, and then they just kept sending my games through, all my footage, every game. And then, of course, Ronan O'Gara helped a bit with speaking to Richie and helping me get into a camp.
Okay, right. So this had kind of been on your radar and your agent's radar for a while. Yeah,
that's exactly it. So, yeah.
Your upbringing for a sports person is very varied, and we've just been talking with a PhD in coaching about how multiple sports is really helpful for you. So you're a basketballer as well as a rugby player, is that correct?
Yeah. I played so many sports when I was a kid. I played football as well, cricket, tennis. I did a bit of swimming, but I think playing a lot of sports really just helped me as a rugby player, because you take all those different aspects and it just adds to your game, like the jumping power, the speed of doing athletics or something like that. It just helps with your rugby game. So it was definitely a great experience.
So you went to school, Ike, in Johannesburg in South Africa, but am I right in saying La Rochelle just saw a clip of you playing rugby in South Africa, and that was what led to them, I guess, inquiring about your availability?
We played a couple of games. It was a festival at Monument High School in Johannesburg, and we played a couple of games, and I did really well in those 2 games. And from there, I was able to get looked at by a French agent, who then sent my games through to a couple of French clubs, and La Rochelle was the one I picked.
And I know you had a contract offer from the Lions on the table in South Africa. So what made your mind up to choose La Rochelle over perhaps staying in South Africa?
I think I always just wanted to play Northern Hemisphere rugby, and then on top of that, just having Rog as the head coach, for me, that was really a big deal. Rog is one of the guys I grew up watching, one of my favorite players of all time. So to have the opportunity to be coached by him. I think also our academy head coach is Guthrie Steenkamp, who's also a Springbok, World Cup winning Springbok, and you got a couple of South Africans in there like Raymond Rule and Dylan Lays. I just thought that it would be a great environment for me to learn, and it wouldn't be it'll be really far from home, but not a few familiar faces.
When did you start taking rugby seriously? When did you decide which of these sports that you were interested in and playing a lot that you would kind of knuckle down and go for the rugby?
I'd say still in primary school, about 12, 13.
Right.
It was just like, I just enjoyed it a lot more. And then my mom, of course, was also trying to push me towards rugby. So, yeah, I think, about then, 12, 13.
And so, were you a fan of Rog because of your Irish background as well anyway, or did you just like the style of play? Like, you know, obviously you can pick which of these many different countries that you're associated with now to play with. What's the link with the Irish rugby team in terms of like dreaming of playing for Ireland?
I don't know. Every single sport I played, I said whichever sport I play, I'll always represent Ireland. I think, I don't know, just wanting to go back, and I actually have no clue. It's just something in me, in my blood.
What part of Waterford is it?
I'm not too sure. I don't remember that much, but I actually don't remember that.
Okay,
much.
right. Okay, it's just interesting that the draw is so strong still. And when the call comes through to be involved in the Ireland under-20 squad, is that like? Was it straightforward? Did you know it was coming? Did you kind of have a sense it might be a possibility?
I think I felt like I was always good enough. I was, of course, in France, and I didn't know if they knew me, if they knew I was here and they knew that I was playing well and I had Irish eligibility. So I think in terms of skill and stuff, I definitely could have, but just in terms of getting there, it was always the tricky part. So when the call came through, of course, I was just really ecstatic. I kind of didn't expect it because like we hadn't been in contact before. I hadn't been to any camps or anything. So it was a big surprise for me. And when it came through, I was absolutely ecstatic. My family was extremely happy for me, and it was a dream come true.
Ike, we have Rog on the show quite regularly here. He's a friend of the show, and he spoke about you a couple of weeks ago. He was full of praise for you. And what's he been like to work with? You know, as both a coach and a person over in La Rochelle. And you know, you can fill him full of praise here because we'll play the clip to him when he's next on.
Yeah, so like even now, I still get starstruck every time I speak to Rog. Like walking through the hallways, he greets me. He's like always full of energy, says my name in a very, very energetic way every time. And he's just a great guy. Like on the field, he's very energetic, full of like very enthusiastic coach, really good at getting his message across to his players, but also like he's also like a really cool guy. Just like when you try to speak to him on the side, you're going to have a couple of laughs with him, can have some banter with him. So he's a great coach, and of course a dream for me, a dream come true to work with him.
I'm reading some of the comments that Ronan has said about you before. He says Ike went back to Ireland with the under-20s, and I had a few texts from the boys going, he's one of your boys, and I said he was. I don't know what his best position is. He could be a belting 12 or he could be a dominant winger. He's very young still, but hopefully we get a top 14 game into him soon. So Rog pointing out you're a very versatile player as well, which is a useful asset.
Yeah, definitely. I think just wherever I've just been put in whatever position suits the team more. So I've just been able to learn many positions and excel at them. So just very blessed to have the skill set and be able to play multiple positions.
What's your preferred position though?
I actually don't even know right now. I think my preferred position is whatever position the coach puts me on the weekend.
Well, I think that's the right. Yeah, exactly. You look at it. So So reading about Jamie Osborne coming through, they didn't have him pinned as a centre. They had him in various different positions. I think still on the Leinster website, and then all of a sudden you get your opportunity and you grab it. Even Gordon Darcy writing in the papers, like for a long time he was a wing/fullback, and then all of a sudden gets thrust into Six Nations as a centre and is player of the tournament. You're like, okay, he might just be a centre now. So I think you got to keep your options open, but. In terms of making the first team, what are your goals for that? Obviously, you want to, right? But what's a realistic time frame for you to be up from the espoirs and in first team squads and match days and getting games? What's the timeline for that? Do you think?
I have no clue, but I would. For me, my goals at the start of the season were to hopefully be in the Irish squad, which I've achieved now, and to make a debut. And in terms of playing regularly, I don't think I'd play regularly this season, but hopefully next season I could get maybe like 5-6 games, and then from there we see what goes on. But I don't think there's a certain time frame. I think it just depends on injuries and stuff also, because we have like a really big squad with insane players, world-class players. So I think it just all depends on how I do and what the first team needs at that point in time, because again, it's hard to give a youngster an opportunity when there's still a couple of world-class guys and all that kind of stuff ahead of them. So yeah, I'm not too sure yet.
Ronan has spoken about the importance of you becoming GIF qualified, Ike, and for people unfamiliar with that term, it's a player of French formation. So each team in France must field an average of 16 GIF players per game over the course of the season. So this is a player who has spent 3 years in France and is not an international anywhere else. So is that an important aspect for you as well, to get that GIF qualification and become one of those players?
Yeah, definitely. I think before I came to France, I didn't really know much about it either. But now finding more about it, I think before I ever leave, I have to get my GIF. So definitely it will help in the future. So that's definitely a big part of one of the reasons I'm here now.
You're involved with Richie Murphy's Irish Under-20 side now for the Six Nations. So I mean, you're making the right strides. What's the ultimate ambition? I mean, getting into that Irish first team, I'd imagine in the next number of years is the ultimate ambition.
Yeah, exactly that. For me, it's always been Ireland and then British and Irish Lions. So those are the two big ones, and hopefully I can achieve them throughout my career.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck with it. It's been brilliant chatting to you this morning, Ike. Congratulations on your inclusion with Ireland, and best of luck at La Rochelle.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. Take care. That's just another interesting story, and really hope that he makes it 6'3".
I can imagine.
We're going to have a big backline.
Oh, huge. I can.
Osborne's massive.
Oh yeah.
Right. So we had Robbie Henshaw speaking with Cameron earlier in the week. Robbie Henshaw is bigger than I've ever seen him.
The hands. We were admiring the hands.
Yeah, and shovels. So it looked like Cameron was a child sitting in one of those children's seats beside him. He's 6'3". Like, looked like a baby beside him.
A big man. Just the raw Irish brutality with the farmers' hands, maybe.
Good midfielders gone a begging for their respective counties.
Yeah, fair point.
Right, it's 9:37. We're a little bit late. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Back tomorrow, Irish boxer Gráinne Walsh, fresh off the back of her victory over Amy Broadhurst, to take the welterweight crown at the National Stadium. We also have Kerry's All-Ireland winner Paul Ganey on the line. Jess Kelly's in studio. We've got the latest around the world with Hannon and plenty else. Obviously, there's going to be tomorrow's daily update on who are the reigning All-Ireland club champions at the moment. We don't know as it stands. That game is in dispute. Now, there's an interesting little wrinkle that's breaking. Crokes are apparently confident that they're going to win any appeal or any hearing on the basis that they didn't break the rule, that the referee is responsible, that what should have happened was it should have been retaken, it wasn't retaken, and so therefore the decision is final. What happened on the pitch stays on the pitch, and away you go.
I mean,
the referee didn't call it back. The free kick was taken without the whistle being blown. they're pretty confident that they're going to win with that.
It's too loose, isn't it? Because as we've been saying,
but like the rules, if there's a legal case, it's going to be made.
Yeah. Obviously, you can make the argument that Kilmacud had a responsibility as well to ensure that their player was off the pitch, or to let the fourth official or the sideline official know that.
Well, if the referee doesn't blow the whistle to allow him to take the free, then the free shouldn't have been taken. The free should have been retaken, but that's just a referee error. And if the free was retaken, the game is over. So I don't know. This is just something that has come to our attention in the last 5 minutes. I'm like,
makes it all the more interesting. And if it's not in the referee's report, I mean, where does that leave Kilmacud?
Well, certainly we could be at the Disputes Resolution Authority at the end of this, or we could replay the game. But I think the mood music, as Declan Bogue was reporting in the Herald and probably in the Irish Independent as well, is that Crokes don't want to do the replay. So we'll see.
No shit, yeah.
9:39. This is the story. As Nickey Brennan goes, well, it's certainly making things interesting. It's definitely making things interesting.
Yeah.
Right, we're playing you out with Galway legend Joe Canning. Loads of interesting stuff here. He was talking with Richie on last night's show, reflecting on an incredible career. He is obviously going to be a pundit, but this is ahead of his TG Carr Lake Regale. Really interesting stuff about the media in particular here, which he's now a member of. Enjoy. Have a wonderful Wednesday.
The 21st series of Lake Regale gets underway on Thursday night on TG Carr. The likes of Liam Sheedy, Anya Wall, Tom Parsons, Anne Dalton and Aidan O'Mahony will all be profiled. But the series begins with a look at the incredible career of one of his generation's finest hurlers, and he joins us on the show right now. Joe Canning, you're very welcome back.
Cheers, thanks for having me, guys.
Not a bother at all. Joe, how did this come about? Who makes the first approach? I'm guessing you didn't stand outside TG Carr's offices and with the sign saying, "Isn't it my time yet?" How did this one come about?
Yeah, literally it was a bit of a surprise for me as well. I was only a couple of months, I suppose, retired. So yeah, the guys from Edmonton kind of called me up and just asked would I be interested. And at the start I was kind of going same as everybody else. I was kind of just, geez, is this my time yet? But I just talked to some of the family and they thought it might be nice for kind of some of my nieces and nephews that probably didn't see the start of my career, and then maybe eventually if I have kids or stuff down the line that they might be able to look back on one show and see a lot of it, you know.
Did it put years on you essentially when that call came in, when you're thinking, geez, I'm not 50 yet, there's no need for this?
Kind of, a little bit, yeah, but even worse when you're looking back on stuff and you're kind of going, geez, that was 20 years ago or whatever. So that's a bit mad when you think about things like that, you know.
How involved are you in putting together stuff for this show? Do they come with a list of kind of topics for you to cover? Do you kind of consult with them? Do you suggest things yourself as regards that you might want to cover? Or
yeah, they kind of come with a few ideas, and it's either kind of yes or no. Do you want to do that or not? So yeah, it was more them coming to me with ideas and then stuff that maybe I probably didn't talk about before that I might have talked about now when you're kind of retired and you're not judged as much, or people can't use it against you as much. So yeah, it was very much kind of both of us together, but very much probably more from their side than my side, you know.
How easy do you find it to look back on your own career?
I don't know if it's easy the right word. I'm not too sure. It's very kind of humbling, I suppose, to like when you're playing the whole time and you're still involved. You don't really look back on what you've achieved or what you didn't achieve, because there's always something else to try and achieve. So yeah, it's probably nice to look back on things that happened years ago that you almost forget about some things that happened, you know. Not forget about them, but it brings back good memories, you know. So that was probably nice just to go back over, especially the club, All Ireland's, and kind of my earlier career, I suppose, with Galway. You always remember stuff that just happened maybe a couple of years ago, but I'm talking like 10, 15, 18 years ago, you know. So they were nice to look back on, yeah.
There's almost like a sense of, you get relief is probably the wrong word, but there's more of a relaxed nature about looking back on it, whereas when you're within a career, everything is building towards a point, whether it's a championship or whether it's the next game or whatever, whereas you get to actually sit back and almost revel in it and look back on what you've already done.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because there is something else coming down the line. So like if you're still playing, there's always this year's championship or whatever that you're worried about trying to achieve more rather than sitting on what you've achieved beforehand. So it's always the way that I suppose everybody will tell you when you retire from whatever sport it is, that's the time you have time to kind of look back on stuff you've done in the past.
I think there was a quote in Friends, I don't know, somebody mentioned that they don't have a TV and they kind of go, well, what's their furniture all pointing at? Like, how have you found that time since stepping away from the Galway panel? Has it been easy I know you're still obviously involved in Portumna and you've got other bits and bobs on the go, but has it been like a major chasm that you've been trying to fill since then, or has there been other things to kind of keep you occupied?
No, not really. I'm fairly busy with work, with Portumna, obviously still playing with Portumna, and then getting involved with the underage in Portumna and getting involved with the Galway minors as well. So that kept me busy. I play a lot more golf than I used to play. So that's a nice kind of bonus, I suppose, in a way as well. So
what's the handicap down to now?
It's 4.1 or something like that, I think, at the moment. So
wow.
But yeah, stuff like going on holidays whenever you kind of you want to go, small things like that. There's always better things than, I suppose, just relying on senior intercounty hurling for all your life. There's a nicer side to it as well.
With regards to the actual documentary itself, was it difficult? There's the sense that, a lot of people might want to revisit things and it might dig up all the ghosts. Did you have any fear about that going into this?
Some things, it kind of that I never spoke about, and that you kind of wanted to get my point of view on it in a way, because even go back to the county final in 2006, that's in it about what happened in that. To me, never spoke about it before, so the stuff like that. There's obviously things with trusting the media and stuff like that. After, I suppose, Henry in 2012, things about, I suppose, Anthony's. The players getting rid of Anthony in 2015. So there's stuff like that you could say nothing about it, but at the end of the day, I didn't say enough. I didn't say anything about it for a long time. So you just want to give your own perspective on it and not have people kind of giving not false perspective on things that happened, but I just wanted my side of the story out there,
Yeah, exactly. The 2012 stuff is interesting, especially that quote from yourself that you kind of felt that in the wake of those comments and in the wake of the replay defeat, that some of your own teammates blamed you for that defeat, which I find absolutely startling.
Well, that's been bandied about today now. I think it's been blown out of proportion as well,
right?
By the media again in how I said that. Obviously the comments I made gave Kilkenny an edge, right? But the media blew them out of proportion, the comments I made. I was actually trying to compliment Kilkenny in the way they were doing it. It was stupid what I said, no doubt about it. Hold my hand up. Unsportsmanlike was a stupid comment, but the rest of it was actually trying to compliment Kilkenny on how they go about things. And I said we needed to be like them. So when it came out after, the media obviously took it a massive thing, me against Henry or whatever, and that obviously gave a kind of an edge to Kilkenny, for want of a better word, for the replay. So it was obvious that lads were going to go, geez, why did you have to say that, give them an extra edge, and then we lost the match. So obviously lads were going to think, geez, if he didn't say what he said, we could have won the match. I got that sense from people, not directly from players, but I would have heard it after that. That's not a big deal to me. And I said that in the paper and to the interviews I've done yesterday. It's not a big deal to me. I probably do the same. So, yeah, it's the media again, I think, pushing something that's not really a big deal to me. That's life. I'd probably be in the same shoes, you know.
Yeah. Do you generally believe that those, not your comments necessarily, but that people can pick up comments from different teams or their opposition in the lead up to a game, and that can add to? Do you genuinely believe that can add to the performance of an opposition?
Yeah, I've done it myself the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's in it as well, be it good or bad. I used to live off people down on us the whole time, because it gave you an extra edge, you know. It gave you another angle. Well, me anyway. And there's probably sports psychologists and sports people like that would say, no, that's the wrong thing to do. But for me, it definitely worked. Like, I remember the journalist from Galway, John Fallon, wrote about us after a Wexford game. Ger Shane obviously had a lot to say about me down through the years. So yeah, whenever they said stuff about Galway or about me personally, I always took that and used it as motivation, you know. So yeah, definitely teams use that. People say, yeah, we don't hear what's going on the week before a match, but I guarantee you they do. And people say, oh no, we don't. They don't put it up on the walls in a dressing room or anything like that. Never something like that. But you'd always have it in the back of your head that, you know, somebody is not saying nice things about us. So you kind of want to prove them wrong. And I used that a lot of my time playing with Galway and with Portumna especially. Yeah,
that can affect people in different ways, though. I mean, what might be grist in the mill for you essentially might not be the case for the guy playing just inside you or whatever.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, I just have to point out that sports psychologists will probably disagree 100% with me, and that's fair enough. But it worked for me is my point, and that's the way I went about things. So, like, people have different personalities. It's not one shoe fits everybody. So they get ticked off with different things, and that's what I used. And like, even Davy Burke's in the documentary, and he's saying that he was telling me to get off Twitter or get off reading the paper or whatever, and because he never did it.
Yeah.
And that was him, and we lived together. So I used to use that sort of stuff as motivation to get me up for games and stuff. Yeah.
Would you be sitting there scrolling through different Facebook feeds and Twitter feeds on your downtime?
No. I wouldn't be going seeking it or anything like that. But if somebody said to me, "Here, just see what this lad said about you," yeah, I would, and I'd read it. Yeah. And like 9 times out of 10, the heading would be completely different than what's said in the actual article as well, which is most of the time in general society, unfortunately now, especially social media, and you get all these clickbait kind of headings. But yeah, if I heard somebody said something about us, I'd go and look at it and see, could I get anything out of it, or was it just a waste of my time, you know?
Did that affect how you dealt with the media going forward then from that point onwards? Were you more, from that 2012 point on, were you more cautious about what you said?
Oh, 100%, yeah. I didn't trust media at all after that. Didn't trust any, like, even in some of my, I would have trusted maybe a couple of journalists down through the years, that if I had to do, let's say, a media gig for Orlagh Energy or whatever, let's say, for instance, there's a handful of journalists that I would have sat down with and done one. For instance, before semi-final in 17, I done that interview probably 3 weeks before the semi-final, and it was put out on the Saturday before the match on the Sunday with Vincent Hogan. And I would have done numerous interviews with Vincent down through the years, but he was one of the very few journalists that I trusted, because I don't think he sensationalised things that others probably did, and that was all stemming from 2012. And you ask most GAA players now, do they trust the media to give? And it's more the headings than anything. Like, I see it today now again with some interviews I've done yesterday. The headings are taken probably out of context a little bit. We were just speaking about what I said about guys blaming me. I also said that I probably blame other guys if I was in that situation as well. But it's taken just to get that big heading. So, like that's a problem down through the years, and journalists I've often hear we can't get access to players anymore, and kind of have to look at it both ways. Do you know what I mean? I think there's lots of players that will give an honest opinion, but in today's world, an honest opinion grabs headlines and sometimes doesn't turn out the way the player intended it to, because there might be one word that they click on and then it's blown up into something that's not actually what they said at all.
On the access thing, because obviously people want to get players' sides of events, and people want to get a little bit of insight on what it takes to be, you know, top intercounty hurler, etc., etc. Do those, like, you know, does that reluctance to talk to media, in your experience? I'm not just specifically talking about Galway or Portumna, but I'm talking about people that you might speak to across the board in GAA. Is it a case where managers say not to talk? Is it a case where a player-by-player basis is often the case where they don't want to talk to people, or is it just an individual kind of aspect?
I think it's a mixture of everything that you just pointed out there. Probably managers, probably players, probably individuals. But I still think it comes back down to the trust that they have with media nowadays.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is probably the clickbait media. I'm not going to name any names, obviously, but like, there's certain areas where they just run with a heading and it's a completely different article than when you actually read down through. You know it yourself, like everybody knows it. That's not a new thing to anybody. But I think it still goes back to trust and what's said. And I think it's a shame, really, because we need to promote the game. We need to promote the game, like in the next. Give, for instance, this year now, 2023, we'll have six months of kind of like national media coverage of, let's say, the intercounty game, and then the next 6 months going to be the Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
So you have half a year where, and people say yes, the club game is on and stuff like that, but I'm talking about a national scale. I'm not talking about a kind of a. Yes, the Galway media will cover the Galway club game, but I'm talking about it on a national scale, which is really tough, you know.
Well, you're now in the media. You're going to be a pundit on the Sunday game. Are you kind of wary that clickbait nature around coverage, essentially, in a wider aspect, but also regards what you might say of a Saturday or Sunday, if you're on a game, that might be taken out of proportion as well? Do you still have to, are you still going to keep your guard up, or are you going to be as honest as you can be on TV?
I think I'm going to be as honest as I can on TV, because I'm not representing another 34, 35 guys or 50 people, for instance, in a group of, let's say, Galway intercounty hurlers. So when you were involved playing, you were always worried about what the other guys maybe thought, or you were representing them. Do you know what I mean? So for me now, I'm representing myself, really. So I'll be as honest as I can be. Like, I'm not going to be criticising players just for the sake of criticising. I'll give my honest view on whatever it is that happens. And that's the only way I can do it. I was always fairly honest in my views, but I was probably a little bit more guarded in certain aspects, because you'll be always kind of worried about that heading. And that stemmed from 2012 totally. So hopefully I'll be as honest as I can, and I won't be everybody's cup of tea. People are going to disagree with me, and that's the beautiful world we live in, and that's fair game. And like, I know well I'll say something at some game during the year, and 20 people might agree with me and another 20 will disagree with me, and that's fair enough, that's fine. And people look at this interview as well and go, he's talking a lot of shite there, or else he's go, geez, yeah, he makes a fair point. And that's life, and you have to accept those things as well, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to clip up that term, he's talking a lot of shite, when you're talking about me, and that's going to be your version of our version of clickbait this evening. Have you kind of spoken to anybody about the punditry? Have you kind of consulted anybody? Have you gone to anybody for advice who's done it before, or have you just based your previous viewing essentially as preparation enough?
Yeah, well, I done one last year with RT as well, so I kind of I saw what was it entailed, I suppose, last year. So and Ollie was involved as well, obviously Sky last year, and for the last number of years. So yeah, I soundboarded Ollie, and I kind of knew what I was doing myself as well from last year. So yeah, it was, and I do a bit of writing as well during last year's championship as well. So. Yeah, I'm fully turned now nearly.
I'm ready to go for this summer as well. Another one of the things that was looked back on in the Laochra Gael episode was the 2015 episode around Anthony Cunningham's departure, and to come so close to winning an All-Ireland as he did that year. And again, you spoke about your own role in potentially that game being turned. The subsequent, was it a vote essentially of confidence in Anthony Cunningham and how that transpired? You mentioned afterwards that you weren't necessarily in favour of how that turned out, or in favour of Anthony leaving for sure. What was your take on that now that we're kind of 7 years removed from it all, or 8 years removed now from it?
Yeah, listen, it's a thing at the time that I suppose, players wanted to change, I suppose. And yeah, we had a vote, everybody kind of knows that from back then. And yeah, I voted to try and keep him. I was obviously in the minority, and the reason I did it was because I thought we should have looked at ourselves and not blaming management for us not actually winning the All-Ireland, the previous September.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
The club chapter.